In the dead of night, a strange light pulses deep within a swamp forest. Something begins to stir in the murky water, taking on a bizarre, unnatural shape, until a small glowing creature finally pulls itself onto a nearby log, and our newly reincarnated hero wakes up, having absolutely no idea where he is. He remembers reading manga in bed, annoyed that his favorite series wasn't popular, and now he's having a full-blown existential crisis as a weird yellow but being genre-savvy, he quickly accepts his fate and decides to focus on survival, so his first brilliant move is to start shouting to see if anyone is around, which immediately gets a response from dozens of glowing red eyes in the darkness. Realizing his mistake, he sees the swamp is just a damp, bug-infested nightmare. Weirdly enough, he finds his new gooey body is actually kind of comfortable, but he quickly snaps out of it, realizing this is no time for an identity crisis. Right on cue, a classic Isekai system window pops up to explain his situation, confirming he's a level 1 slime mold whose HP is so low his body's eating itself. This panic sets in as he watches his health tick down, realizing he's about to die again, so he desperately scans the desolate swamp for anything that looks remotely edible until the system window flashes his one useful trait. He's a decomposer. Having a sudden epiphany, he figures if he's a decomposer, he can just eat the log. His body automatically spreads out to envelop the wood just by thinking about it, and he discovers his first meal has the distinct flavor of a soggy biscuit. Eating the log pays off, bumping him to level 2 with full health, though now wood is off the menu for an hour. Along with the level up, he gets a skill point to dump into either decompose or something called pulsation. And with zero idea what pulsation is, he just throws the point at it to see what breaks. This skill instantly activates, sending a weird pulse through his gooey body as it stretched. Turns out pulsation is just a fancy word for sloshing his guts around to move, a revelation that hits his non-existent brain. Now that wood is just empty calories, he decides it's time to slither off the log and explore, actually having a blast with his new shifting abilities as he lowers himself down like a weird gooey spider. While slithering around, his attention is immediately drawn to a strange, glowing mushroom nearby. His human brain screams poison, but his new slime mold instincts are screaming 5-star meal. Trusting his gut over his memories, he starts carefully inching his way toward his next potential meal. A quick info dump reveals slime molds are basically nature's supercomputers for finding the fastest route. But our boy is just focused on slowly inching his way toward that very suspicious mushroom. Up close, the thing looks less like food and more like a pulsating, tentacled alien plant, which of course doesn't stop him from gleefully diving in to start chowing down. This whole experience is bizarrely framed like a guy finally meeting his online girlfriend. Pure little mushroom, who asks if he's the tough guy bang bang she's been waiting all this time for. And our slime mold, now imagining himself in a sharp suit, confidently confirms his identity, only for her to turn around and reveal a horrifying multi-eyed drooling monster face. He instantly realizes he's been catfished by a literal toxic woman in a classic online scam. Right on cue, the system confirms a toxin invasion as his health starts plummeting fast. This poison hits instantly, his health plummeting as he realizes his 5-star meal was a trap. So in a moment of pure desperation, he literally spits out the part of himself that's infected. This system confirms he's toxin-free but lost body mass, permanently lowering his max HP, which he chalks up to a brilliant tactical amputation, conveniently ignoring he just got played, and now he's making a dramatic retreat while vowing revenge like some kind of slimy general. His grand plan for recovery involves finding the nearest dead tree stump to munch on. After about 15 minutes of slowly enveloping the wood, he's ready to absorb it. Turns out eating wood on cooldown gives 0 XP, but it does restore his lost body mass. Feeling completely revitalized, our boy celebrates being back at full health, ready for round 2. So with his body fully restored, he slithers off the stump to continue his swamp adventure. He hatches a brilliant plan to take small bites of the mushroom, then retreat to heal, which he dramatically dubs Project Move Mountain like he's leading a military campaign. With unshakable confidence, he starts slowly consuming the toxic fungus piece by piece, while his brain frames this whole ordeal as him repeatedly trying to arrest a monster girl, who just keeps breaking out of her imaginary handcuffs every single time he tries. He's literally playing cops and robbers with a mushroom while fighting for his life. After another failed attempt, he's forced to make yet another tactical retreat, but this time the system dings with a successful decomposition and a new skill, poison resistance. Suddenly it all makes sense why he's been lasting just a little bit longer with each toxic bite, though he's still pretty bummed that all this effort hasn't even earned him a level up. Realizing the swamp is just a giant mushroom buffet, he decides to go on a leveling spree and immediately dings level 3 after chowing down on some safe, non-toxic ones, then moves on to a species-toxic variant, rocketing him to level 4 and buffing his poison skill. With his newfound confidence, our boy just starts absorbing every single fungus in the area indiscriminately, which gets him to level 5 before the system slaps him with a 24-hour mushroom XP cooldown. Having eaten his fill, he decides to pack up the leftovers for the road instead of wasting them, and his brilliant idea of packing is to just wear the mushrooms like a poisonous, lumpy hat. He's convinced he's a genius for inventing biological armor, just like crabs using sea anemones. Feeling completely untouchable in his new fungal armor, he smugly continues on his journey, right as a swarm of giant wasps appears, completely unimpressed and ready to attack. He desperately hopes his brilliant mushroom armor will make him invisible to the giant hornets, but the swarm is already on the move, carrying chunks of something unidentifiable. Just as he braces for the worst, a giant frog leaps out and snags one mid-flight. Our boy is stunned to see a local resident suddenly jump into the fight for him, which immediately turns the entire hornet swarm's attention onto their new amphibian enemy. From the safety of the tall grass, he gets a front row seat to the unfolding chaos, watching as the frog gets completely mobbed by dozens of angry buzzing insects. This hornets waste no time, with one landing a nasty sting right on the frog's back, while another one just starts chomping on its head like a piece of bubblegum. It becomes pretty clear the frog is outmatched, proving that numbers beat size in this swamp. Our boy watches the chaos, realizing monster corpses are a 5-star XP buffet just waiting for him, though the frog is getting absolutely wrecked, with hornets stinging and chewing it from every angle. It's looking pretty grim for the amphibian as it starts to drool, clearly on its last legs, until it whips out its tongue in a last-ditch effort, snagging half the swarm in one go. With a mouthful of bugs, the frog lets out a victory croak, thinking it's won the day, a sudden comeback that completely surprises our slime mold, who was already planning the funeral feast. This frog chills on a branch, enjoying its win, completely oblivious to the real food chain, right as a much bigger predator suddenly looms over it from the shadows with a toothy grin. In one brutal snap, the frog's victory celebration comes to a very messy and very sudden end, revealing the real boss of this pond is a giant bird, which now has a frog and snake combo meal. This bird stares him down with one massive eye, making it very clear who's in charge here. Completely outmatched, our boy just offers himself up as a free meal, mushroom armor and all, his whole disastrous Isekai career flashing before his non-existent eyes in his killer's gaze. But the giant bird just looks completely disgusted by the sight of him for some reason, and instead of eating him, it violently pecks the mushroom hat right off his head, which sends our hero flying through the air while taking a solid chunk of damage, eventually crash landing somewhere deep in the dark woods, completely disoriented. He's just been launched clear across half the swamp under the pale moonlight, his precious mushroom armor now just a sad little pile of fungi on the ground nearby. And this whole ordeal teaches him a valuable lesson. He's at the absolute bottom of the food chain. He concludes the only reason he survived is because he's too pathetic to even register as food, and the system confirms this, officially branding him a level 5 weak creature with a pile of unspent points. All that grinding was for nothing, since the game still considers him completely and utterly pathetic, which sends him spiraling into another crisis about how a blob is supposed to thrive in this world. Utterly exhausted, he just gives up for the night and hopes this is all one terrible dream. But the morning sun confirms this is very much his new miserable, seeing them as two sad sacks just trying to get by. So he magnanimously offers to share the mushrooms, telling the little con artist to eat up. This snail keeps up the waterworks, which our boy completely misreads as a touching moment of friendship, and his inner otaku is now convinced this is a classic shonen rival-to-friend story arc. He's already picturing them leveling up together, getting awesome class changes like a proper adventuring party, a grand fantasy that ends with them using the power of friendship to take down the Demon King. Snapping back to reality, he's fully sold on the idea and formally offers the snail a team-up, and the little monster seems to accept, letting him get nice and close to seal their new alliance, only to immediately drop the act and take a massive, brutal bite right out of his body, a painful lesson that in this world, shonen friendship tropes just get you eaten. Realizing he's been completely played, our boy tries to slither away while the snail is busy eating, but the little monster immediately notices his escape attempt, letting out a creepy little chirp. This snail is surprisingly persistent, chasing him down the log without missing a single beat, so with no other options, he dumps his last skill point into pulsation for a desperate speed boost. He puts all his focus into a full power escape, determined to get away from this psycho snail, which actually works, sending him blasting forward at an incredible new speed across the wood, though a few minutes later, the chase is somehow still going, with the snail slowly gaining ground. Our boy is completely baffled that this buffed-up snail can somehow match his maxed-out speed. Right as his pursuer starts winding up for another attack, its body weirdly contorting, this snail then unleashes another volley of its signature corrosive acid to cut off his escape. This snail's acid spray connects perfectly, melting a massive chunk right out of his body. As the goo splits him in two, he starts having a philosophical crisis about where his consciousness will end up, but he quickly realizes this is probably the worst possible time for an existential debate. Meanwhile, the snail just lets out a horrifying shriek, its maw dripping with more corrosive slime, and another attack slams into him, splattering his already damaged body all over the log. While he's busy vowing revenge, the little monster just casually slurps up the mushroom sludge, and after finishing its disgusting meal, it turns its full attention back to him. Suddenly, a giant shadowy silhouette with glowing red horns appears, making him think a new boss has arrived. But it's just a weird mushroom that fell over, a truly pathetic false alarm. This real horror is the snail, which finally drops the act to reveal its true, terrifying monster form. With his back against the wall, he activates burst and kamikazes directly into the monster's mouth, which causes the snail to let out a final gurgling shriek as our boy detonates inside, and its entire body immediately starts to melt away from the inside out, completely overwhelmed, until it finally collapses, netting him a sweet level up to 6 and some skill points. Turns out his wild gamble paid off, correctly guessing the snail used acid because it had 0 poison resistance. He's absolutely ecstatic, celebrating his very first monster kill since arriving in this bizarre world, and now it's time for the best part, as he eagerly moves in to decompose the corpse, though he's immediately disgusted by the slimy, gross texture of his hard-earned meal. Trying to psych himself up, he decides to just pretend he's enjoying some high-class French escargot, but as he starts dissolving the body, his own form suddenly begins to horribly mutate. He immediately recoils, realizing his victory meal tastes like salty, sour, weaponized snot, and the system confirms he's so disgusted he actually canceled the decomposition, gaining 0 XP. After a moment of hesitation, he decides wasting a hard-won kill is just not an option, concluding that if he actually wants to survive, he can't afford to be a picky eater anymore. So with grim determination, he forces himself to dissolve the entire disgusting snail corpse at once. This time, the absorption process hits him like a truck, making his entire world distort violently. His gooey body starts convulsing on the log as the snail's essence floods his system, until a massive hard red shell suddenly erupts right out of his back, a permanent souvenir. He dings level 7 and is rested, though he feels even worse now that he's a snail blob hybrid, leaving him with a pile of skill points and a serious new body image crisis to deal with. After his big win, he realizes his entire skill set is just for eating, tanking, and running away, which leads to the depressing discovery that he has absolutely 0 offensive abilities to speak of. He quickly accepts this pathetic reality, since complaining won't magically change the fact he's a blob, and besides, he's way too weak to fight the buff animal people of the swamp anyway. With his combat dreams crushed, he just dumps his new points into pulsation to get better at escaping, and with the skill now at level 4, he's eager to test out his brand new top speed, proudly zipping forward a whole 20 centimeters in a single glorious second. A massive improvement that he's genuinely impressed with for about 5 seconds, until he does the math and realizes his top speed is still less than 1 kilometer per hour. A full week later, he's still just moping on a log, having accomplished absolutely nothing. After a full week of moping, he finally decides it's time to stop hiding and find a new base, but not before going on one last supply run to stock up on some much-needed snacks. He activates a new search skill, spreading his body out into a massive, gooey scouting network, which basically turns him into a living radar system covering the entire forest floor at once. This new technique immediately pays off as his tendrils snag a few mushrooms from a distance, and he continues hoovering up every edible fungus he can find, storing them all internally. Turns out mastering his blob form means he can explore and digest on the go, a huge efficiency boost, even grabbing a toxic variant that conveniently bumps his poison resistance up to level 4. His exploration hits a snag when he bumps into his old snail rival's shell, which is completely indigestible, right before something sharp drops from the sky and stabs him for a nasty chunk of damage. A sharp projectile stabs him from above, and he realizes another one of those psycho snails has found him, unleashing a familiar blast of corrosive acid that immediately starts dissolving his body on contact, which sizzles through his form and chips away another 7 points of his precious health. Banking on his recent speed upgrades, he immediately tries to make a quick getaway from the new threat, noting this snail is way faster than the last one, but still convinced he can outmaneuver it, right as another acid blast hits him dead on, vaporizing a massive chunk of his health bar, and his attacker just casually slithers through the acidic steam, completely unfazed by its own attack. As it lunges in for the kill, it gets its entire face grabbed by one of our boy's gooey tendrils, who reveals he took that last hit on purpose, having already figured out this monster's critical weakness. With the trap sprung, he slams his entire body directly into the snail's face to end the fight. He finishes decomposing the snail, dinging level 10 from the massive XP boost, and begrudgingly admits that eating monsters is way more efficient than chewing on logs. With his business concluded, he slithers away from the empty shell to continue his journey, until he senses another presence and confidently calls out what he assumes is another little snail, only for a massive blade-legged centipede to rise from the grass instead, looking absolutely furious. This new monster completely dwarfs him, casting a terrifying shadow over his gooey body, its razor-sharp legs twitching menacingly as it sizes up its next potential meal, which sends our boy into a full-blown panic, realizing he's picked a fight way above his pay grade. This giant bug immediately lunges forward, ready to turn him into a yellow smear on the grass. So in a moment of pure desperation, he starts chucking mushrooms at it like they're grenades. This centipede's bladed legs slice through the air, easily deflecting his pathetic mushroom projectile, and our boy immediately realizes that throwing fungus at a giant bug was a terrible idea. This monster wraps around him for a myriapod blade strangle, digging its sharp legs deep into his body, but instead of getting sliced to ribbons, his gooey form just kind of absorbs the attack, revealing that being a squishy blob makes him completely immune to all slashing damage. With the tables turned, he smugly starts decomposing the trapped centipede, calling it a free XP delivery, and after that easy win, his system immediately locks onto another target, a shiny beetle nearby. He then spots a wasp and figures it's probably way too fast for him to deal with right now. And upon seeing a cockroach, he decides to just pretend that particular monster doesn't exist at all. So instead of hunting, he just kicks back in a clearing to enjoy a nice, safe mushroom snack. He's now a level 13 slime mold, though the system still insists on calling him a weak creature. But eating actual meat has him feeling great, since the leveling speed is so much better now, and he's already picturing his glorious climb up the food chain. With frog legs on the menu, a power fantasy that immediately spirals into him conquering the entire world on a throne of bug corpses. With his ego fully inflated, he continues his grand journey and stumbles upon a random pool of water, immediately assuming there must be a ton of valuable resources hidden beneath the surface for him to plunder. So with absolutely zero hesitation, he decides to just dip a gooey tendril in to test things out, which instantly causes his entire body to swell up like a water balloon that's about to pop. Turns out being a single-celled organism means fresh water floods his body thanks to good old osmosis, forcing him to accept that his grand underwater expedition is officially cancelled for the foreseeable future. While he's relaxing by the water, a massive crab monster suddenly surfaces right next to him, and his foodie brain immediately identifies his potential next meal, a giant, juicy-looking crab, which is just sitting there blowing bubbles, looking completely harmless and maybe a little bit dumb. His hunger completely takes over, imagining a perfectly cooked seafood platter instead of a monster. So he tries to sweet-talk the crab onto the shore, hoping it's gullible enough to become dinner. This crab just climbs onto a nearby rock, completely ignoring his very suspicious invitation to be friends, and continues blowing bubbles, totally unimpressed by his attempts at luring it to its doom. Our boy is genuinely annoyed that this creature isn't just walking into his mouth on command, so he decides to just poison the water with mushrooms, opting for some light chemical warfare instead, right as the crab unleashes a high-pressure water jet, proving it was never the dumb one here. That high-pressure water jet slams into him with enough force to punch a hole clean through his body, sending him flying back as the attack pierces him without even slowing down, and our boy is completely stunned that this thing basically has a built-in pressure washer. Another blast immediately follows up, carving off a chunk of his health as he tries to dodge, which sends him careening into a nearby tree with a pathetic splat. Hiding behind the trunk, he realizes this crab is on a whole different level than the other bugs, so he decides to play the long game, convinced he can just outweight his opponent. After a tense moment, the crab finally makes a move, making him think it's finally giving up. But it turns out the monster is just climbing ashore to take this fight to him directly, charging forward with its claws raised, ready to turn our little slime into seafood paste. That crab immediately kicks into high gear, dashing straight at him with surprising speed, and our boy peeks from behind the tree, realizing this thing is dead serious about eating him. With no other options, he frantically starts slithering up the trunk to make a quick escape, already thinking he can use the high ground to outmaneuver the crab's water attacks, right as he comes face to face with a giant spider monster that's already claimed this spot. He just tells the spider to get lost, completely ignoring the fact that he's the one trespassing, then has the nerve to call the spider ungrateful, flexing that he's eaten plenty of bugs before. Unfortunately for him, this particular bug isn't impressed by his resume and just stares him down, before unleashing a vicious arachnid slash that carves right through his gooey body, which lops off a huge chunk of health and makes him question his entire slashing immunity theory. This level 16 spider monster starts casually munching on him, flexing a high-level sword skill, right as the crab below fires another high-pressure water jet straight up the tree trunk, leaving our boy officially stuck between a spider and a hard place, taking hits from both sides. He can only watch as the two monsters square off, realizing his luck has hit absolute rock bottom, but the crab's bubble barrage zips right past him, aimed directly at the spider instead, scoring a direct hit that sends the eight-legged freak flying with a surprised shriek. This spider tumbles off the tree, completely blindsided by the attack from its new rival, and after a moment of stunned silence, it looks up, absolutely furious about the interruption. It lets out an enraged screech and fires off a thick strand of webbing in retaliation, which completely ensnares the crab, officially kicking off a full-blown monster turf war. This spider immediately retaliates with a nasty arachnid slash, aiming to slice the crab in half, but the crab's shell is surprisingly tough, completely tanking the hit without even a scratch. Now, fully webbed up, the crustacean starts trying to snap the sticky threads with its claws, though the spider just uses its silk control to keep its new rival completely immobilized. Meanwhile, our boy is just congratulating himself on his genius plan to make them fight each other. With the crab completely tied down, it looks like the spider is about to claim an easy victory, until the crustacean starts foaming at the mouth, clearly charging up another massive attack. It unleashes another high-pressure water jet that sends the spider absolutely flying through the air, which only makes the bug monster evolve into a much more terrifying and enraged form, and the newly buffed spider immediately slams its bladed leg right into the crab's face. This newly evolved spider comes crashing down, ready to end this turf war with one final blow, while the crab is still completely webbed up, looking like it's about to become Spider Chow. Not taking any chances, the spider uses its silk control to wrap its rival up even tighter, leaving the crab completely mummified in a thick cocoon of inescapable webbing. From his safe spot on the tree, our boy is pretty sure the spider just scored an easy win, until the crab starts foaming at the mouth again, clearly not done fighting just yet. It's charging up another massive bubble attack, preparing for one last desperate comeback, unleashing a massive bubble barrage that tears through the webbing like it's nothing. The swirling vortex of water completely engulfs the spider before it can even react, and the bug monster is instantly blown to smithereens by the sheer force of the attack. This crab's final gambit is a massive water vortex that absolutely shreds the entire battlefield, and our boy realizes the crab just triggered its survival instincts for a last-ditch super move. With its energy completely spent, the webbed-up crustacean finally collapses in exhaustion, leaving nothing but a pile of spider bones scattered across the now quiet clearing. Cautiously peeking from his hiding spot, he wonders if the chaos is finally over. He confirms the turf war is over, leaving one very tired, very vulnerable winner. So he confidently slithers up to the immobilized crustacean, mocking it for being completely gassed out, already trying to figure out the most efficient way to finish the job before it recovers. His eyes land on a sharp rock nearby, sparking a truly primitive idea for a weapon, a plan that involves absorbing the stone into his body to use it for the final blow. His brilliant plan immediately fails when the system says his inventory is already full of mushrooms, forcing him to spit out his entire snack collection just to make room for the new rock weapon. And after clearing some space, he finally manages to absorb the stone into his gooey body. His entire form strains and bulges as he struggles to contain the massive object within himself, now armed but incredibly slow, complaining about the weight as he waddles toward his target. He confidently announces he's here to collect his prize from the exhausted, webbed-up crab, then launches himself into the air for a dramatic rock-powered finishing move, but the crustacean starts foaming at the mouth, clearly not out of the fight just yet. Right as he's about to land the hit, the crab unleashes another powerful water jet to intercept him, proving this monster still has plenty of fight left, staring him down with surprising confidence. That rock-powered body slam connects with a brutal crunch, ending the fight in one move, and with the crab defeated, he dings level 14 and smugly declares himself the sole winner. His ego is now completely out of control as he basks in the glory of his hard-earned kill, and with the victory speech out of the way, it's finally time to enjoy the spoils of war. He then proceeds to cook up the spider's remains in the crab's shell, a true gourmet moment. Using a spider leg as a fork, our boy prepares to dig into his very first proper meal, taking a bite of the spider eggs and getting completely blown away by the incredible flavor. Turns out giant bug legs are the most delicious thing he's eaten since his reincarnation. After a diet of moldy wood and snot snails, this is basically a Michelin star experience for him, so he happily finishes off the spider eggs, now motivated to survive for the food alone. He's now a level 14 weak creature, which is just the system's way of telling him not to get cocky, and feeling fully motivated after his gourmet meal, he decides it's time to try out a new trick, so he squares up against the empty crab shell, ready to put his brilliant new theory to the test. With every ounce of his being, he starts straining like he's trying to pass a kidney stone, his entire gooey body convulsing as he tries to channel the crab's raw power. Letting out a dramatic scream that echoes through the otherwise silent clearing, he calls out to the empty air, trying to summon the same energy his opponent used, convinced he can copy the crab's water jet because logically, if it can spray, so can he. He puts every last bit of focus into unleashing his own devastating bubble barrage, and after all that buildup, he manages to squeeze out a sad little puddle of goo. His inner monologue is basically telling him he's doing it all wrong, and he's just left with a sad little puddle, complaining about his total lack of power. Feeling completely outraged by his own pathetic performance, he decides to try something new, this time combining the idea with his burst skill for a bit of extra oomph, which unexpectedly causes the system to evolve his ability into cytoplasm spray. Turns out he can now weaponize his own body, shooting out goo like a living water gun, a sudden power-up that leaves him absolutely stunned that his skills can even evolve. He then realizes the old time limit is completely gone, which means one very important thing. Our boy can now just spam his new attack over and over again with zero delay, unleashing a rapid-fire barrage that completely shreds the empty crab shell to pieces. His new favorite toy immediately levels up, but he quickly learns there's a pretty big catch. Turns out every shot drains his health, and now the system is warning him he's about to eat himself. This forces him to accept he's just a blob with no magic, so his only path forward is to eat everything, which leads to the brilliant five-head question of what happens if he just eats himself. He then finds a chunk of his own body that got lopped off during the spider fight, and after confirming it's his missing piece, he decides to test out his new theory. With a bit of focus, he starts the reclamation process to reabsorb the lost goo, which not only restores his health but also boosts his max HP and gives him weird memories. He realizes his severed parts can act on their own, basically farming XP for him while he's busy, a discovery he immediately recognizes as a game-breaking bug he can totally exploit. He hatches a brilliant plan to multiply his leveling speed by creating a personal XP farming slime army, so he immediately tests out his new division skill, ripping off a chunk of himself for a small HP cost. Though it turns out any clone below 30 HP will just start eating itself to survive, which is a problem. But with enough food in the area, he figures he can just create an infinite number of clones anyway. And with that in mind, he starts straining with all his might to pop out another one, which explodes from his body in a surprisingly violent process for just making a little friend. Just like that, his first successful clone starts wiggling around, proving the technique actually works. And his inner nerd is now fully convinced he's mastered the shadow clone jutsu, headband and all. Already picturing himself leading a massive army of goo clones to total swamp domination, though his first command to his new soldier is to just go chew on a nearby log. He immediately puts his new clone army to work, assigning them to the very important task of guarding mushrooms, though his status screen confirms he's still a weak creature, but at least his skills are looking beefy. With his minions deployed, he decides to eat the leftover spider meat to get back to peak condition, and this new power trip has him convinced he's basically become a terrifyingly strong apex predator now. Imagining how a simple piercing attack would just bounce right off his gooey body, completely useless, while a normal slash would be just as ineffective since he has no bones or organs to break. Even a more advanced sword skill that slices him clean in half doesn't seem like a big deal, because his body just reforms, making him practically immune to all physical damage, which is nice, leaving him pretty sure nothing physical can actually kill him anymore. But there's one tiny exception, which would be magic, a threat he's thankfully never even seen in this bug-eat-bug world. With his clone army deployed, he figures it's time for some R&R by the water, until a massive claw suddenly erupts from the depths and snags one of his minions. Turns out the pond is crawling with crabs who've decided his clones are the new lunch special, and they start dragging his precious XP farms onto the shore one by one. This quickly escalates into a full-blown crab raid, with the entire local population joining the feast, all of them swarming towards the tree where his main body is trying to lay low. As the crustacean army surrounds his hiding spot, our boy finally starts to get a little annoyed, letting out a furious scream as he watches his hard work get turned into crab cakes. So he unleashes a new attack, slamming into the tree and impaling the entire crab squad below, a brutal counter that nets him 6 kills, a level up, and a valuable lesson about waterfront property. He immediately gets back to training, using a random stick for some much-needed target practice, and with his newfound confidence, he squares up against a random rock, ready for a serious fight. In his head, he's a badass gunslinger unleashing a plasmodial barrage, with perfect form. But in reality, he's just hawking gooey loogies at a completely stationary target. This intense training session pays off, leveling up his cytoplasm spray to respectable level 6, and after 2 straight days of this, his accuracy is way up, though the system warns he's about to starve. He figures out his limit is about 30 shots before he runs out of juice, leaving him wondering what's next, right as he gets a brilliant idea to spice things up by using the items he's been hoarding. He realizes he can wrap poisonous mushrooms in his goo, basically creating his own poison-tip bullets, and by that same logic, he can shoot rocks for some actual physical damage from a distance. His new rock bullet splatters against a test target, proving his ranged attack theory actually works. Feeling like an absolute genius, he's already basking in the glory of his new combat style, right as a strange noise from a nearby tree hollow completely shatters his victory lap. He spots some weird glowing lights coming from the hole, immediately piquing his curiosity, so he cautiously slithers over for a closer look, hoping it's not another monster. Peeking inside, he's greeted by a massive glowing owl that looks suspiciously like a boss, a creature so intimidating it sends a literal shockwave right through his entire body. This is the exact magic-wielding nightmare he was just bragging about never having to face, so he immediately tries to book it, but the owl just calmly watches his pathetic escape attempt. Its eyes glow ominously, activating a skill called symbiotic scrying right on him. A pink-haired adventurer's magic eye suddenly locks onto something in the distance, and she casually tells her party she's just spotted a weird little monster, nothing important. Meanwhile, her group is getting nervous since they haven't seen any monsters and their comms are dead. Our boy realizes he's been made and immediately bolts, knowing he's no match for actual adventurers. He frantically looks for an escape route and decides the river is his only shot at survival. So he comes up with a brilliant plan based on high school physics to launch himself across. Using his plasmodial barrage as a makeshift jet engine, he shoots himself over the water, a move that costs him a massive chunk of health but gets him to the other side. Not wasting a second, he continues his high-speed escape, zipping through the forest like a madman, finally collapsing against a tree, completely gassed out and hoping he's finally safe. He's hiding out, trying to recover by eating a branch, fully aware he's too weak for a real fight, right as a terrifying demonic presence makes itself known somewhere in the distance, which sends him into a full-blown panic, thinking the owl somehow tracked him all the way here. But as he peeks out, he realizes this new threat isn't a bird at all, because a massive flaming dragon leg just slammed down right in front of him, crushing everything. After the monster moves on, he's left staring at the wreckage, completely stunned by what just happened, until he spots something weirdly out of place on the ground, a single severed finger. Turns out this isn't just any finger, it's a literal golden finger power-up just waiting to be eaten. And his mind immediately races with the possibilities, picturing a massive evolution if he just absorbs it, a stroke of sheer dumb luck that sends him into a fit of maniacal, greedy laughter. He wastes no time trying to dissolve his new god-tier power-up, the golden finger, but the process immediately starts to go horribly wrong as his body struggles to break it down, his goo just sizzling uselessly against the finger's surface without making a single dent. This system confirms the decomposition failed because the level gap is just way too massive, and not only that, the attempt backfires, dealing a nasty chunk of damage right back to him, forcing him to sever the part of his body that's still touching the finger to avoid dying. That little chunk of himself just plops onto a log below, a sad reminder of his failed meal. He's now kicking himself for not leveling up his decomposition skill sooner, a truly rookie mistake, so with the prize too big to eat, he decides to just go grind and come back for it later. Right as the entire forest starts shaking, making him wonder if an earthquake just hit. This source of the earthquake reveals itself as a giant rocket-powered centipede monster crashing through the trees, which slams into the ground with enough force to carve out a massive smoking crater in the earth. Our boy panics and unleashes his mighty plasmodial barrage, which is just him spitting a tiny glob of goo, and this grand counterattack leaves a pathetic little smear on a tree as he realizes he's completely trapped. This ground continues to crack and splinter from the sheer force of the impact, leaving him nowhere to run, so he immediately ducks behind a tree, completely terrified by the new arrival on the scene. His brief moment of confidence is completely shattered, leaving him a quivering puddle of existential dread. Deciding he's way too weak for this, he resolves to just hide out and quietly farm XP from now on, completely unaware that just beneath him is an underground cave full of treasure and monster eggs, and it turns out the Rockset Centipede has made this exact same cave its personal new lair. This shockwave from that centipede's crash landing finally starts to die down, and a quick mental map confirms he's now stuck between a rocket bug and a magic owl. He wisely decides to build a temporary base, figuring he'll go collect his clones later, immediately getting to work by using his dissolution skill to carve out a new home. His brilliant plan is to make the entrance tiny so no big monsters can follow him inside, so with a little imaginary hard hat on, he officially starts construction on his new bunker, spending the next while just melting his way through the wood with grim determination. His excavation even uncovers a glowing mushroom, which he immediately claims as a new nightlight, and after all that hard work, he carves out a comfy little bed for himself, looking very proud, leaving him with a fully furnished safe house, complete with snacks and mood lighting. He maps out his new 2-story bunker, complete with poison mushroom security at the entrance, and feeling totally secure, he starts flexing with a stick like he's some kind of bodybuilder. Our boy kicks back in his new home, convinced he's finally achieved maximum safety and comfort, until a loud buzzing from outside completely ruins his nap, making him incredibly cranky, so he peeks out of his hole to yell at whatever's making all that racket, demanding some peace. Turns out the noise is a massive swarm of giant wasps, and he immediately gets a brilliant idea. Deciding this is the perfect opportunity to test out his new long-range combat skills, he fires off one of his rock bullets, instantly vaporizing the first wasp that gets in range, then smugly taunts the entire swarm after getting the XP, basically daring them to attack him. Unfortunately for him, they take that offer and now his front door is covered in angry bugs. This wasps try to sting him through his tiny bunker entrance, which turns out to be a terrible idea because he just uses his entire body as a giant gooey flytrap for the whole swarm. After the initial wave is dealt with, he's left with a pile of easy kills, and the system confirms he's racking up XP just by being a sticky, murderous blob. He spots a few survivors flying away and decides to follow them back to the source, which leads him directly to their massive nest hanging from a nearby tree. With a huge XP jackpot in sight, he slithers up a branch for a better vantage point, already plotting how he's going to wipe out the entire colony for some sweet, sweet levels. A few scouts immediately spot him just sitting there, looking like a very suspicious yellow puddle, and in response, the entire hive swarms out to greet him, a far bigger army than he expected. He's completely surrounded but still taunts the swarm, convinced their stingers are totally useless against him, so the wasps just pile on, forming a massive buzzing death ball around his entire body, and then they start vibrating in unison, literally cooking him alive with a heat-smothering attack, which sends his HP plummeting as he realizes they're not just stinging him, they're microwaving him. In a desperate move, he unleashes a plasmodial barrage from inside the swarm to blast his way out, but a much tougher-looking wasp just summons a beeswax shield, blocking his attack completely, leaving him stunned as his goo bullet splatters harmlessly against the magical barrier. It finally dawns on him that the wasps guarding the hive are way stronger than the scouts, right as a massive, elite-looking wasp with a spear-like stinger makes its grand entrance. And it starts casting a literal magic spell, the one threat he was bragging about never having to face. This hornet mage just casts Swarm Summon, calling in an entire army of its angry little friends, and our boy immediately recognizes this is an evolved monster that can use actual magic, his one weakness. This mage just stares him down with those cold, dead bug eyes, not even flinching for a second, and at its command, the entire swarm immediately charges forward to overwhelm him with sheer numbers. So he decides to fight fire with fire, charging up his own plasmodial barrage to even the odds, unleashing a massive shotgun blast of his own goo, hoping to shred right through their ranks, which actually works surprisingly well, splattering a bunch of the cannon fodder wasps instantly, but he quickly realizes each shot costs him 10 HP, and he's running out of health fast. Luckily, he's sitting on a giant tree, which he just starts eating to turn into an infinite health battery. Just as he gets cocky, a guard wasp pops a beeswax shield, blocking his attack completely. Another guard wasp just tanks his shot with a shield, forcing him to rethink his entire strategy, and since he's running low on ammo, he decides to just let the entire swarm close in on him. This wasps immediately start stabbing him with their stingers, turning him into a gooey pincushion, which is exactly what he wanted, as he smugly thanks them for the free home delivery. He then starts dissolving the bugs stuck to his body, turning their own attack into a free meal, happily accepting their generous donation of XP and loot as he melts them down. Though the system promptly tells him his inventory is full of mushrooms again. What a surprise. So he gets a brilliant idea and wraps his goo around a looted stinger, creating an armor-piercing round, a new weapon that shatters a guard's shield and scores a one-hit kill on the first try. This new trick finally gets the attention of the Hornet Mage, who just calmly watches the chaos unfold. This Hornet Mage suddenly orders a full retreat, pulling its entire swarm back from the front lines, and our boy immediately gets cocky, assuming they're running scared from his awesome new power. Turns out the mage isn't running, it's just conducting its guards like a tiny evil orchestra, who gather up a massive glob of honey, preparing some kind of special attack, and his foodie brain completely short-circuits at the sight of it, desperate for a taste. Unfortunately for him, the mage starts enchanting the honey with some kind of fire magic, casting a spark ember spell that turns their sweet offering into a literal fireball, which comes flying straight at him before he can even process what's happening. It slams into him for a whopping 70 damage, melting a huge chunk of his gooey body, and before he can recover, the mage launches 2 more honey fireballs to finish the job. He realizes fire magic is his absolute hard counter, especially with that nasty honey splash damage, and while frantically eating the tree to heal, his brain finally screams at him to run for it. Another fireball slams into him before he can even move, confirming his escape plan is already failing, so he desperately fires off a plasmodial barrage to try and create some kind of opening a last-ditch shot that zips right past the cannon fodder, aimed squarely at the Hornet Mage. But its 2 elite guards just throw up a twin beeswax barrier, stopping his attack cold. His goo bullet splatters uselessly against the shield as the mage starts buffing its guards with more magic, leaving our boy completely floored that these bugs can even use support spells, calling it totally unfair. Right as the mage casts Swarm Summon, because things clearly weren't unfair enough already, which calls in a fresh batch of glowing self-destruct bees, and that's just fantastic news. These newly summoned kamikaze bees immediately lock onto him, glowing with some very explosive intent, and the entire living carpet bomb swarm dives straight for his hiding spot on the tree branch, which they immediately start blowing to bits in a massive fiery chain reaction of explosions. That blast is so huge it sends a chunk of his gooey body flying through the air, leaving him barely hanging on after taking a direct hit from the bug apocalypse. Meanwhile, the Hornet Mage just watches the carnage unfold, completely unfazed by its own war crimes, and our boy is now trembling on the branch, finally realizing he might have picked the wrong fight. To make matters worse, a few wasps start chewing through the branch to send him falling, and before he can even react, the entire swarm of suicide bombers regroups to finish the job, right as the mage orders its guards to start gathering honey for another one of those fireballs. With our boy cornered, the Hornet Mage starts casting its own ultimate attack, launching a massive superheated honey bomb right at his hiding spot, a sticky flaming projectile that screams through the air with terrifying speed. At the same time, the entire Suicide Squad dives in for a coordinated carpet bombing, and the whole mess connects in a massive fiery explosion of honey and bug guts. That blast completely obliterates the branch, sending him flying into the water below, leaving the Hornet Mage to just calmly survey the smoldering aftermath of its attack. This entire area is now just a scorched wasteland, littered with smoking debris, and the bug boss seems pretty satisfied that its target has been completely vaporized. Its remaining guards just buzz around, waiting for the order to return to the hive. This Hornet Mage suddenly freezes, sensing something is terribly wrong with its supposed victory, because it turns out our boy's dramatic defeat was just a decoy he left behind on the branch. He reveals his master plan. While they were busy attacking the clone, his real body was on the move, secretly dissolving a hidden tunnel right through the tree and straight into their nest. He sacrificed a huge chunk of HP to create that perfect distraction, and the wasps totally fell for it, and with the entire swarm focused on the fake, his main body slipped right into their unguarded hive. He plops down inside the nest, ready to turn their home into his personal buffet, immediately spreading out to use a new search skill to map the entire structure, which creates a perfect gooey blueprint of every last tunnel and chamber in their home. His search leads him straight to the nursery, where he finds a disgusting pile of wasp larvae. Rummaging through the hive, he's still looking for the real jackpot, not just some larvae, and he stumbles upon the honey storage, a sweet bonus but not the main objective on his list. With his priorities straight, he ignores the snacks and keeps pushing deeper into the nest, crashing right through the floor to make a grand entrance into the next chamber, where he finally finds the massive grub-like queen bee, the source of this whole mess. Turns out the queen is just a giant, defenseless larva, the perfect target for a hostile takeover, right as the Hornet Mage realizes its home has been breached and scrambles back inside. Its entire elite guard swarms in right behind it, only to find the situation is much worse, because our boy has the queen hostage, threatening her with a rock like a true criminal mastermind. This queen herself is just screaming in terror, completely at the mercy of a gooey kidnapper. This Hornet Mage and its guards can only buzz in fury, completely outplayed by the hostage situation, its entire elite squad frozen in place, unable to attack without risking the life of their queen. He smugly asks if there's any room for negotiation, already knowing he holds all the cards, then immediately dissolves the helpless queen right in front of them without even waiting for an answer. This sends the Hornet Mage into a state of pure, unadulterated rage at the sight of its dead leader, and outside, the entire swarm immediately starts dropping from the sky, their hive mind completely shattered. He confirms his theory that killing the queen would cause the entire colony to just disintegrate, proving his point that low-level monsters only operate on instinct, making diplomacy totally pointless. All that carnage nets him a massive XP boost, jumping straight from level 15 to 17. This system also warns him about a bee-waste debuff as the hive itself begins to crumble. With the hive wiped out, he's now a beefy level 21 slime mold with a brand new skill, and he's already trying to figure out how his new central command ability even works. Turns out, he can't just dump points into his racial skills, a lesson he learns the hard way. At least his inventory is now overflowing with high-grade honey, a pretty sweet consolation prize, so he takes a moment to survey the absolute carnage he's left behind, a field of fallen wasps. He's getting all sentimental about his journey from a weak little blob to a top-tier predator, reflecting on all the bugs and crabs he's had to melt to get to this point, while elsewhere a little crab kid is wondering why his dad hasn't come home to play. Turns out Daddy Crab was entertaining clients, which is a nice way of saying he got eaten. And as the clock ticks on, it's pretty clear that family reunion is never going to happen. Meanwhile, a very concerned crab mom decides to take her son out to find his missing dad, and the kid starts singing a dramatic hero song as they head out, much to his mom's annoyance. They soon spot a lone silhouette stumbling down the street, looking completely wasted, and the little crab boy immediately recognizes the person as his father, looking so relieved, so they call out, trying to get his attention as the drunkard stumbles in the wrong direction. This kid happily runs over to help guide his dad back home, completely unsuspecting, until the monster turns around and coldly informs him that his father was in fact delicious. This horrifying revelation sends the poor kid into a fit of pure, unadulterated screaming, and back in the forest, our boy is having a full-on meltdown, realizing he's become the villain. He's left all alone to grapple with the fact that his survival just created a tragic backstory. He has a brief moment of guilt over his new life as a monster-murdering blob, but quickly embraces the whole survival of the fittest mindset to justify his actions. With his moral compass now conveniently broken, he decides to go reclaim his XP farming clones, so he zips back through the forest, eager to see what his little minions have been up to, until a strange glowing light in the distance completely throws off his travel plans. His first thought is a campfire, which would mean he's finally about to encounter other people. So he cautiously makes his way over, trying to get a better look without being spotted. This thought of finally seeing other humans has him way more excited than he probably should be, and peeking through the bushes, he spots an entire party of adventurers just chilling by a fire. He immediately ducks for cover, realizing it's the same group the magic owl was spying on earlier. He's spying on a C-rank adventurer named Nia Ross, who's casually petting her massive boar companion, while their captain, Rake Carter, is beating himself up for getting them lost while searching for their guildster. A B-rank mage named Cole tries to cheer him up, blaming the magic jamming maze they're stuck in, but Rake isn't convinced, reminding them their guildmaster has been out of contact for 2 entire years. Turns out their leader, Gon, might have been set up by the church after accepting a mission from the Pope, which makes sense, since his inclusive no-evil policy helped his guild grow way too powerful for its own good. He conveniently vanished right after taking that mission in this very swamp, which is not a great sign, and in his absence, their once great guild has been poached and is now falling apart at the seams. Naya admits she's only here because Gon's guild was the one place that accepted her niche profession, but Cole reassures her that with her beast-taming skills, she'll always have a home somewhere. Naya tells Cole to shut his mouth before she does it for him, and he immediately backs down. Meanwhile, our boy is using a makeshift ear to eavesdrop on their very dramatic fireside chat, trying to piece together their talk about guilds and churches, realizing this is some prime intel. To get a better signal, he stretches out a gooey tendril, basically turning himself into a spy satellite, and his little spy limb inches closer to the campsite, completely unnoticed by the distracted adventurers, until the mage Cole suddenly senses his presence, calling out the monster hiding in the bushes. This leaves his little listening device completely exposed right out in the open, wiggling pathetically, and without a second of hesitation, Cole launches an ice spike that skewers the poor tendril instantly. This system confirms the frost effect is super effective, dropping his speed by a crippling 90%, leaving him stuck in the bushes, partially frozen and realizing he just got one shot by a random mage. This entire party snaps to attention as Cole calls out the monster he just spotted in the bushes, and his ice spike zips through the air, heading straight for the source of the disturbance. Naya's boar barely has time to react as the spell flies right past its face, slamming home and instantly skewering our boy's little spy tendril, freezing it solid. Back in the bushes, his main body recoils in pain from the sudden, icy amputation, sending him into a full-blown panic as he desperately tries to slither away unnoticed, his entire life flashing before his eyes. Pretty sure this is the game over screen he's been dreading. But just as they're about to investigate, Naya's boar starts sniffing at the leftover goo chunk, and she surprisingly calls off the hunt, telling everyone it's just a harmless little monster. So his severed piece is left to just wiggle pathetically as the giant boar gives it a curious sniff. Naya scoops up his severed goo chunk, which looks absolutely terrified by the sudden development, and she offers to make a monster contract with him, feeling a weird sense of familiarity. Our boy's inner monologue immediately short-circuits, convinced he's just met his Isekai angel. But the party leader Reike shuts it down, telling her not to waste mana on a weak slime, so she reluctantly drops the little clone back on the ground, much to its disappointment, where it quickly realizes they can't actually hear it speak, which is a bit of a problem, so the little goo puddle starts wiggling around trying to get their attention another way, morphing its body into a series of strange root-like tendrils across the grass. This new trick finally gets the party's attention as they all stare at the weird display because it's literally spelling out a message to prove it's an intelligent life form. This party just stares at his message, with Naya thinking it's just some kind of rare slime waste. Our boy has a full-blown crisis, realizing his Chinese writing is completely useless in this world. Deciding it's better to be a mysterious puddle than a dead one, he gives up and starts to leave. He zips back towards the river, at least knowing humans exist, even if he can't talk to them. This brings him right back to the owl's territory, making him super paranoid about another encounter. With his clones still out there, he decides to test his new central command skill to find them. His body lights up, activating a personal radar system that starts pinging for his lost minions. A massive energy pulse expands from his body, scanning the entire surrounding forest for his clones, and the scan locks onto a signal, pinpointing the exact location of his scattered XP farms. Just like that, he gets a perfect tactical overlay showing where all three of his clones are hiding. His new command skill lights up like a beacon, pinpointing the exact location of his lost minions, and with no time to waste, he immediately zips off to go collect his hard-working XP farms. This signal gets stronger as he approaches, leading him right to his first surprisingly beefy clone, leaving him completely stunned to see just how much his little minion has grown in his absence. Turns out the clone has been busy decomposing everything in sight, becoming an absolute unit. So he uses Reclamation to absorb it, instantly getting a massive XP boost and overhealing his HP. Then without missing a beat, he rockets off to find the next one, ready for another power-up. Reclaiming the second clone nets him a jump to level 22 and a boost to his poison resistance, so now all that's left is to track down the final piece of his scattered army. But his internal radar suddenly beeps with a weak signal, suggesting something's gone very wrong. He frantically searches for his last clone, worried his precious XP pack is in serious trouble, and finally spots the little guy hiding out near a patch of mushrooms, looking very vulnerable, right as a giant, toothy snail monster corners his minion, ready for a slimy snack. So he fires off a warning shot, telling the overgrown escargot to back off his property. His poor little clone is just frozen in terror, sweating goo all over the place, which sends our boy into full-on protective parent mode, vowing to save his little one. With his main body closing in, the snail has absolutely no idea what's about to hit it, as a massive red tendril suddenly slams down, completely obliterating the pest in one brutal hit, revealing he just morphed his own body into a giant fly swatter to save his minion. Meanwhile, a random frog is just chilling nearby, completely unbothered by the monster-on-monster violence. His last clone is cornered by a massive frog monster, looking completely helpless, so our boy puts on a show, crying fake tears and accusing it of eating his baby, before unleashing a plasmodial barrage to avenge his fallen snail minion, which catches the frog completely off guard as the projectile screams towards it, slamming right into its face and sending the overgrown amphibian flying backwards. He smugly tells it to choke, already confident he could take on the magic owl now, but his victory lap is cut short when he realizes the frog isn't actually dead, because it just caught his rock bullet with its massive bulging tongue and proceeds to spit his own attack right back at him with terrifying speed, completely obliterating the ground where his poor little clone was just standing. He taunts the overgrown amphibian, absolutely convinced it has nowhere left to run, but the frog just croaks and dives into the nearby pond, completely ignoring his threats. So he unleashes a full-on shotgun blast of goo, trying to nuke it right out of the water, a grand attack that just splashes uselessly into the pond, hitting absolutely nothing. This frog has already vanished beneath the surface, leaving him staring at the ripples, and our boy is fuming, realizing he's got no way to attack a target hiding underwater. Just as he's about to give up, the frog suddenly leaps back out of the water for a breath, triggering a biology class flashback as he realizes amphibians can't stay submerged forever. With the frog exposed midair, he gets ready to deliver the final glorious blow. Right as it unleashes its power release, revealing a horrifying toothy maw ready to strike, he lands a direct hit with his plasmodial barrage, sending the massive frog flying backwards and immediately follows up with another shot, hoping to finish the job while it's stunned. That second projectile slams home, skewering the amphibian right through its jaw for good measure, but the monster just spits out the splinters, looking more annoyed than actually hurt. Our boy is left clinging to a tree, completely stunned that his attack barely did anything, and it finally dawns on him that his overconfidence just got him lured into a fight. This frog just wipes the blood from its eye, clearly done playing games with him, letting out a furious croak as it prepares to show him what a real monster can do. Just as it leaps to attack, our boy realizes he's completely out of rocks for his ammo, so he decides to just attack first and ask questions later, firing off some pure goo. It turns out his pure goo attack is just a free meal for the frog, who happily chose down, leaving our boy completely stunned that his brilliant plan is just feeding the enemy. With a smug little croak, the amphibian finishes its snack, completely unharmed by the whole ordeal. Then it opens its horrifying mouth and shoots its tongue out like a biological grappling hook, which latches right onto our boy's face, sending him into a state of pure panic. This frog starts reeling him in, stretching his gooey body out like a piece of taffy. He desperately tries to anchor himself to the ground, but his grip is already starting to fail and his hand slips, sending him flying straight towards the monster's waiting jaws. He's about to become frog food, screaming his little goo lungs out the entire way down, but in a last-ditch move, he wraps himself around a sharp rock, trying to reverse his fate. That sharp rock becomes the perfect counter, brutally impaling the frog's tongue mid-attack, and with a final taunt, he sends the massive amphibian flying backwards from the recoil, which splashes down hard into the pond, its body quickly sinking into the murky depths. Our boy lets out a huge sigh of relief, barely processing how close that call actually was, as the frog's hand disappears beneath the surface, leaving nothing but bloody ripples behind. This water is now just a gruesome mess, with no sign of the corpse anywhere in sight, which is a huge bummer, since he can't decompose a body that's sunk to the bottom. But just as he's complaining, two glowing eyes light up in the depths, and that's definitely not the frog, right as a massive horn erupts from the pond, shattering the tree he's clinging to, leaving the entire trunk split clean in two by a monster he didn't even see coming. That mystery horn launches the entire tree he was on, turning it into a deadly projectile, because it turns out the frog just pulled a final evolution, transforming into some kind of holy terror. Our boy is left completely speechless, realizing he just accidentally triggered the monster's final boss form, and this new form lets out a horrifying roar, revealing a mouthful of razor-sharp teeth. It immediately unleashes a brutal attack, whipping bloody tendrils out from its own body, which slam down with enough force to shatter the ground he's desperately clinging to. In a panic, he stretches out his own body, preparing to fire back with everything he's got, launching a massive goo spear in a last-ditch effort to land a critical hit, an attack that splits into a shotgun blast of smaller projectiles, a full-on desperation move, right as his brain finally catches up, deciding a wise mold knows when to run for its life. With the frog now a full-blown nightmare monster, our boy's survival instincts finally kick in, screaming at him to flee, so he makes a mad dash across the pond's surface, hoping to escape before it can even react. But the monster unleashes a sanguine lash, whipping its toxic bloody tendrils right at his back. That attack connects for a brutal 199 damage, shredding a huge chunk of his gooey body, and he realizes its blood is a super toxin that's melting him faster than his resistance can keep up. Without giving him a second to recover, the frog monster winds up for another devastating lash, which smacks him clean out of the air, sending him spiraling straight down into the pond. He hits the water with a massive splash, completely disappearing beneath the murky surface, taking a measly 1 point of damage and smugly thinking physical impacts are useless against him, until a system alert warns him he's now dissolving from the inside out due to osmotic pressure. That nightmare frog opens its horrifying maw, about to turn our boy into a quick snack, and just like that, he's down the hatch, leaving the frog looking incredibly smug about its victory. It just floats there peacefully in the pond, completely convinced it's secured an easy meal, but a sudden croak of discomfort reveals its dinner is fighting back from the inside. His HP starts plummeting as the frog's stomach acid begins to rapidly digest him alive, and he realizes he's too weak to force his way out, completely trapped inside the monster's gut. This sends the frog into a frenzy, thrashing around as its meal starts doing some serious internal damage. So with no other options, he realizes he's going to have to try something absolutely desperate, gambling everything on one last-ditch escape plan by forcing a tiny tendril back up its throat, and begins the disgusting process of squeezing his entire body out through its esophagus. This frog monster starts bleached from its eyes, clearly regretting its choice of snack, because our boy is inside, absorbing water to literally stuff the monster to death from within, and its pain croak does nothing as the slime just keeps getting bigger and bigger. To speed things up, he chugs his entire supply of high-grade honey for a massive HP and size boost. Now fully charged and ready to pop, he prepares to deliver the final very messy blow, which results in the frog monster exploding in a spectacular shower of blood and guts. Our boy emerges from the carnage, now an absolute unit of a slime monster himself, and the system confirms the kill, rewarding him with XP and a brand new antibody skill. He just floats there in the pond, taking a moment to appreciate his new ridiculously huge form, Realizing he's become so massive, he's practically a landmark in this swamp now. This system rewards him with a new skill and a massive HP boost that's already on a 1-hour timer, and it turns out his new size lets him absorb even more water, making him an absolute unit of a blob. He realizes his giant form is the only reason he can handle the water pressure, a happy little accident, but the panic sets in as he realizes his 10,000 bonus HP is about to expire. So he decides he has to make the most of this temporary god mode before it's gone for good, immediately daydreaming about being a full-on kaiju, ready to terrorize the local ecosystem, which gives him a brilliant game-inspired idea to turn himself into a giant rolling death ball. He just starts rolling through the swamp, absorbing and decomposing everything in his path for free XP, crashing through the forest like a gooey bowling ball on a mission for more levels. Meanwhile, the local fish can only stare in horror as their entire world gets bulldozed by a hungry blob. His new kaiju form is great for bulldozing, but not so much for catching these agile fish underwater, and he quickly realizes that despite his size, the water resistance makes him way too slow to hunt effectively, so he decides to just give up on the seafood and haul his massive body back onto dry land. With a huge splash, he drags himself ashore, ready to continue his reign of terror on solid ground, leaving a slimy trail of destruction as he slithers back into the forest looking for easier prey, where he immediately spots two adorable little otters, enjoying a nice fish dinner all by themselves. So naturally, he looms over them like a giant, gooey monster to say a very friendly hello, which sends the poor things into a panic as he slams down to steal their hard-earned meal. He just casually informs them that their fish is now his property, because that's how nature works, leaving the two traumatized otters covered in slime and wondering where their lunch just went. He decides to spare the cute monsters, a final shred of his humanity still intact, until he spots a random squirrel which apparently doesn't make the cut for his new moral code. Turns out the squirrel is actually a fire-type monster that immediately powers up to attack him, launching a massive fireball that screams right towards his giant, very flammable body, which connects for a ton of damage, reminding him that fire is still his biggest weakness. Since the little rodent started it, he decides to finish it by just engulfing the thing whole, scolding it for playing with fire in a forest as he completely smothers its flames. This system confirms the kill, leaving nothing but a clean skeleton and some easy XP. Just as he's celebrating, a series of razor-sharp claws suddenly slash through the air, revealing a massive lizard monster that's already lunging in for the next surprise attack. Turns out the real threat is a creepy treant monster with a glowing core, ready for a fight, and the giant lizard monster isn't impressed at all, just getting more ticked off by the second. Without wasting a second, it lunges forward to unleash its own special attack, launching a massive glob of acid spit that smacks the treant dead on. Its entire body starts melting away, revealing the glowing core was its only real weak spot, except the core just detaches itself, leaving the melting shell behind like a used-up decoy. It zips over to a nearby tree stump, clearly not done with this fight just yet, merging with the wood to instantly grow a brand new, even tougher-looking body. This sends the lizard into a full-blown rage, realizing its attack was completely useless, so it just charges in with a wild rush, hoping brute force will finally do the trick. This treant's new body immediately goes on the offensive, lashing out with its thorny branches, which manage to skewer the charging lizard, but barely even slow its furious momentum. More wooden spikes erupt from the ground, trying to pin the beast down before it gets too close, but the lizard just powers through the pain, getting more enraged with every hit it takes. That's when the treant reveals its real trick, sprouting weird flower buds all over its limbs, which bloom into a beautiful yet deeply unsettling display of magical flora. This lizard monster stares in confusion, completely unaware of the trap it just walked into, as the flowers open to reveal a horrifying cluster of eyes, unleashing some kind of psychic attack, which causes the lizard's own eyes to burst in a gruesome shower of blood and gore. With the beast blinded and screaming, our boy swoops in to steal the kill. He dives in to steal the kill while the lizard is blinded and screaming, launching a high-speed projectile straight at the monster's exposed head, but the beast just hardens its scales, deflecting the attack like it's nothing. Turns out blinding it was pointless, since it just activates its thermal vision skill, locking onto our boy's heat signature with terrifying precision despite its ruined eyes. It immediately smashes the ground where he was hiding, barely missing him, then whips its tail in a massive circle, kicking up a devastating whirlwind of debris, a brutal spin attack that catches the poor treant right in the crossfire. That tail slams down with pinpoint accuracy, smashing the treant's glowing core to bits, which dissolves into a pile of goo, leaving the lizard to claim the kill for itself. With the lizard blinded and screaming, our boy swoops in to dissolve its head while it's distracted, latching onto its face and beginning the very gross process of melting it down for parts. And the poor beast can only scream as its entire body gets turned into a gooey snack. His heat signature flares up as he completely consumes the monster, leaving no trace behind, and in just a few seconds, the entire beast is gone, reduced to a few leftover bones. This system rewards him with XP and a weird notification about a foreign object it found inside, leaving him a little confused by the message, but he decides to just roll with it for now. With his God mode timer ticking down, he continues his rolling rampage to absorb more stuff, already clearing a massive chunk of the forest and turning it into his personal buffet, but somehow the woods just keep stretching on, making him wonder just how big this place is. His rampage is so intense that the entire forest floor is shaking under his massive weight, when suddenly a massive shadow with glowing magic circles appears in the sky above him, launching some kind of colossal dark spear right down at his location with zero warning. He's left wondering if he's seeing things, since the giant magic array made absolutely no sound, right as the system announces his God Mode timer has officially run out, clearing his bonus HP, which instantly deflates him right back down to his original, much less intimidating form. His rampage nets him a massive level up to 49 and the hilarious title Weak Creature Lord, and he's completely stunned to see just how much power he gained from that 1-hour bender. This system also hits him with a 1-hour XP debuff and a full inventory, mocking his new lordship. So now he has to sort through a ton of junk, including some swords from a very unlucky adventurer. Back in his tiny form, he starts violently puking up all the junk he just absorbed, leaving a lovely pile of bones, swords, and other indigestible garbage all over the forest floor. He's left as a sad little puddle, feeling much lighter but also way less intimidating, and his XP gain is frozen for an hour, which puts a real damper on his mood. Just then, a system notification pops up offering a class change or evolution at level 60, which gets him super excited, realizing this is the monster equivalent of a career upgrade. Turns out his mimicry skill is the key to becoming a slime mold magine, a huge qualitative leap, so he immediately starts daydreaming about learning magic and taking over the world like a true villain. But his power fantasy is cut short when something massive zips right past his head, because a squad of giant dragonfly monsters just fired a spear straight at his face. A trio of magic-wielding hornets zips past, each one armed and looking for trouble, and our boy immediately recognizes the threat, realizing he's stumbled upon some high-level pests. Instead of running, he decides to follow them from a safe distance, curious about their destination, tailing them through the swamp and staying low to avoid getting spotted by the angry patrol, which leads him to a massive super colony, where the hornets immediately start attacking something. He's completely blown away by the sheer scale of the hive, realizing this is a full-blown insect empire. This entire swarm is focused on a single target, launching a coordinated assault on an intruder, and it turns out their hive has been breached by some kind of giant fleshy creature tearing its way out. This thing is a horrifying bird monster, which seems to have just hatched from inside their own nest, and it immediately starts chowing down on their larvae, treating the hive like an all-you-can-eat buffet. Our boy immediately recognizes the bird monster, remembering how it almost gave him a heart attack before, and the entire hornet swarm dives in for a full-scale assault, trying to defend their home from the beast, but their physical attacks are completely ineffective, just bouncing right off its tough hide. Even its weird snaketail thing is getting swarmed, but the bugs still can't seem to do any damage. So they switch tactics, trying to pin it down by covering its entire body with their sheer numbers, but the monster just shakes them off like a bad habit, completely unimpressed by their Zerg Rush strategy. That's when the elite Hornet mages show up, preparing to unleash some serious magical firepower, each one channeling a massive fire spell, ready to rain down some serious destruction on the intruder, and the entire sky lights up with a meteor shower of fireballs, a last-ditch effort to save their colony which erupts in a massive explosion, leaving our boy stunned by the sheer power of this upgraded hive. This bird monster gets absolutely cooked by the Hornet's massive fireball barrage, a truly spectacular light show, but it just shakes off the flames like it's taking a warm shower, completely unfazed by the attack. Even its weird snake-tail thing is totally fine, letting out an annoyed little hiss at the inconvenience, leaving the Hornet mages completely stunned that their ultimate move was basically a glorified heat lamp. So the snaketail decides to return the favor, whipping around and swatting the bugs out of the sky, activating its thermal vision to hunt down every last one of the panicked hornets with terrifying precision. It slams down with a furious roar, crushing a few of them under its weight for good measure, then unleashes a powerful shockwave that sends the entire swarm spiraling out of control. Our boy realizes the monster absorbed the fire, and now it's smartly targeting the queen to end this, right as the main bird body reveals its own trick, preparing a nasty-looking ice spell to finish the job. Turns out the explosion attracted the adventurer party, and Rake immediately warns them this bird is a lord-level threat. Our boy watches from the sidelines, realizing the humans he met earlier are here to hunt the same monster. This bird's snaketail is already encased in ice, showing the adventurers struck first with a powerful spell, but the monster just shatters the ice like it's nothing, completely unfazed by their opening move. Rake tells Cole to charge up a high-tier spell, promising to buy him the time he needs to cast it. With a smug grin, Cole guarantees he can one-shot the beast as he begins channeling his magic. This monster isn't waiting for an invitation, lunging forward with its talons ready to strike, so Rake bravely intercepts the attack, taking the full force of the blow right on his shield. He struggles to hold his ground as the massive creature puts all its weight behind the assault, realizing this thing must have evolved into a beast after feasting on all the other high-level monsters. Rake uses a shield counter to barely hold the monster back, buying his team a precious second, but his shield immediately starts to splinter under the sheer force of the assault. At the same time, its snake tail whips around for a nasty surprise attack from the side, so Naya sends in her boar Piggy to intercept with a full-speed tackle. That tackle connects hard, knocking the massive bird monster completely off balance for a moment, and its snakehead attack zips right past Rake's face, a very close call indeed. This monster stumbles back, clearly furious that its easy meal is putting up such a fight, and its snake tail starts gurgling, preparing to unleash some kind of nasty counterattack. It begins gathering a massive amount of fire energy, way more than the Hornets ever managed, unleashing a pseudo-dragon breath that has Cole screaming about incoming high-tier magic. Cole screams at his party to get ready, preparing to tank the massive incoming fire blast, slamming his staff down to summon a high-tier glacial barrier just in the nick of time. This monster's fire breath immediately collides with the ice wall in a spectacular elemental clash, while our boy wisely stays hidden, realizing he'd be instant goo in a fight of this level. That magical ice starts melting almost instantly under the sheer intensity of the flames, forcing Cole to pour every last drop of his mana into just holding the barrier together. In the end, his defense just isn't enough, and the entire wall shatters spectacularly, but it thankfully absorbed the worst of the blast, leaving the party shaken but alive. Our boy just watches from his hiding spot, completely blown away by the power of real magic. Too bad for them, Cole admits he just wasted his one big spell and is now on cooldown. With his mage on cooldown, Rake tells Naya to use her boar for cover, so Piggy unleashes a spiny back attack, firing off a volley of sharp quills, which rain down on the bird monster in a surprisingly ineffective barrage. Meanwhile, Rake powers up to 100%, ready to go all in for the kill right as the monster unleashes a massive wing flap to blow them all away. This beast looks down, more confused than hurt by the porcupine cosplay it's now sporting, giving Rake the perfect opening to leap in with his meteor hammer attack. He brings the massive weapon down with enough force to shatter the ground, but the monster's snake tail whips around at the last second to intercept the blow, taking the full impact and getting its head brutally smashed into the dirt. With the snake tail smashed, Rake confidently declares the fight is finally settled, and the party cautiously approaches the massive, seemingly defeated bird monster on the ground. Our boy watches from the sidelines, realizing human teamwork is so OP he needs to join them ASAP. Rake then orders Nia to read the corpse's memories for clues about their main target, but the dead snake tail suddenly springs to life, sinking its fangs right into his shoulder. At the same time, the main bird's eyes snap open, revealing it was faking the whole time, and now it's fully conscious, its eyes glowing with pure, unadulterated rage. That snakehead's bite immediately starts to work its magic on the party leader, prompting Cole to scream that it's petrifying venom and they need a potion now. So Naya rushes to administer the antidote as Rake's body already starts to stiffen. Naya frantically tries to force-feed Rake the antidote, hoping to reverse the petrification, but it's way too late, as his throat has already turned to stone and he can't even swallow. This venom spreads like wildfire, turning his entire body into a gruesome stone statue right before her eyes, leaving Naya to cry out as the useless potion bottle shatters on the ground beside him. Cole immediately snaps into survival mode, screaming at her that they have to run now, but she's completely frozen in shock, unable to process that her leader is just gone. So he forces her onto Piggy and they bolt, explaining the monster just absorbed Rake's life force. This bird monster just watches them go, its wounds already starting to close up from the meal, letting out a triumphant cry as it fully recovers, looking healthier than ever after the fight. Meanwhile, Cole bites open a mana potion, clearly not planning on going down without another fight. As they flee, Cole insists they can still save Rake if they find a high-level priest in time, but the bird monster isn't about to let its meal ticket just run off that easily, leaving Naya to completely panic, asking what their brilliant escape plan is now. He tells her to save her magic, revealing he's about to handle this himself by unleashing a full-on ice gatling spell to pin the beast down. His attack freezes the snaketail solid, nailing it right to the forest floor, and the barrage of ice shards hammers the main body, actually managing to push it back. That snakehead lets out a pained shriek, its fire magic completely snuffed out for the moment, so Cole immediately screams at Nia to run while she can, knowing it's about to retaliate because he's staying behind to hold it off, fully aware this is a one-way trip. Fully juiced up on her potion, Cole thanks Nia for the assist, ready for one last heroic stand, and unleashes a massive glacial barrier to hold back the monster while screaming at her to run. Nia is left completely stunned, watching her friend sacrifice himself just to buy her a few seconds, so she snaps out of it and orders Piggy to make a break for it while the coast is clear. Her only goal now is to escape and report the horrors of this forest back to her church. But just then, her owl companion Miwu, who she thought was long gone, suddenly swoops in, giving her a surge of hope as she calls it over, thinking its vision will guide them out. This bird lands on a nearby branch, but its timing feels a little too convenient because its eyes suddenly glow, activating a mysterious skill called Sanctified Fall, which immediately locks onto Naya with a holy symbol, revealing her own pet just turned on her. Naya is left completely stunned, realizing her own pet just marked her for death, while in some sealed-off dimension a battlefield is littered with the remains of countless monsters. A lone knight named Gon sits calmly amidst the carnage, checking his system window, which warns him his buffs just expired and it's time to pay back his mana debt. He just pants heavily, finally feeling the full weight of his exhaustion now the buffs are gone. Surrounded by a graveyard of giant monster bones he apparently made all by himself. Suddenly, a horrifying amalgamation of corpses rises up, taunting him for finally looking tired, revealing it's the king of the swamp forest and it's been watching Gon's 2-year rampage. This beast even knows about his system, mocking him for using it to become so powerful, and admits this was all a trap, but Gon was way tougher than they ever expected. This monster king offers him a classic villain deal. Join the grand plan or become a mindless puppet, so Gon pretends to think it over for about half a second, before deciding his official answer is to just murder every last one of them. But the king just laughs, reminding him it's immortal inside this eternal barrier he's trapped in, and a glob of pure nightmare fuel immediately shoots out to prove its point, as the beast taunts him for being a mere mortal who's clearly at his absolute limit. Instead of arguing, Gon just calmly opens up his personal inventory screen, pulling out a fancy-looking vial of something that's glowing suspiciously bright, which he immediately crushes, unleashing a blast of what's apparently true holy water. And this holy light erupts outwards, leaving the Monster King wondering what the hell that is. That holy water erupts in a massive flash, engulfing the entire battlefield in pure, divine light, and Gon reveals it's a soul-scorching weapon, annoyed he had to use his ace so early. This Monster King starts screaming, completely shocked that a fallen angel has this kind of power, and it can only curse his name as its supposedly immortal body gets absolutely cooked by the flames. This divine fire rains down across the entire dimension, seemingly purifying everything in sight. But a system alert suddenly warns Gon that the monster is somehow about to regenerate. Right on cue, a massive pillar of energy erupts from the ground, proving the fight isn't over, and Gon watches as the beast's body is torn apart by the holy light, a seemingly fatal blow. Realizing his soul-burning attack should have been permanent unless there's some kind of loophole. That's when the king reveals its true form, laughing that its sanctified fall mode counters his trump card. This Monster King starts monologuing, demanding to know how Gon mastered the power of adaptation so quickly, and reveals it was all thanks to Gon slicing off the Dragon Emperor's finger earlier in the fight. Turns out some weak monsters found the severed part, which let the king sense and reclaim it from afar, using a flashy corpse reclamation skill to pull the lost piece right back to its main body, and it finally realizes Gon coated his weapon in holy water to hide the finger from its senses. By only using a little holy water, Gon accidentally gave the king just enough time to adapt to it, so now that he's out of tricks, the king summons a massive stone hand to finish him off. That hand quickly forms into a massive golem, towering over the completely exhausted knight, as even more rocky claws erupt from the ground, ready to drag him under for good, unleashing its earth burial abyss magic to entomb Gon right where he stands. Instead of getting buried, Gon just activates his spear's earth absorption skill, turning the entire rock trap into a power-up as he bursts free from the ground, and immediately launches a piercing all things attack straight at the monster's core, but the king just laughs, mocking him for running on fumes and broken gear. It unleashes a massive necrotic shriek, a full-blown abyss magic soundwave, which crashes down on him like a tidal wave of pure, screaming nightmare fuel. This system immediately starts screaming at him about low durability and critical fatigue, but even while bleeding, he winds up for a 1-inch punch with spiral force, completely ignoring the system's final warning about causing himself irreversible damage because at this point, he's decided going out in a blaze of glory is the only option left. His final punch completely shatters his gauntlet, a pretty clear sign he's pushed way past his limits, but the attack connects dead on, slamming right into the Monster King's very surprised-looking core. As his piercing all things skill tears through the beast's body in a brutal, last-ditch assault, landing with enough force to crater the entire battlefield in a truly spectacular final blow. Unfortunately, the recoil from that move leaves him bleeding out all over the place, and Gon admits his entire left arm is now completely ruined from the self-inflicted damage. This Monster King, of course, finds this hilarious, taunting him for choosing to suffer instead of just dying, and it mocks him for still thinking he has any chance of turning this fight around, leaving Gon to regret his miscalculation, realizing he should have used all his holy water from the start, right as the king reveals its new trump card, the fully assimilated Dragon Emperor's finger. This king gloats that Gon is actually fighting the entire Holy See, a pretty big reveal for a final monologue, as a massive abyss spear comes screaming down to finish him off for good, but Gon just calmly looks up, apparently having one more trick up his shattered sleeve, activating a hidden power through his ruined arm which begins to glow with an ominous light, and a massive demonic contract suddenly unfurls around him, revealing his real ace in the hole, a little something called Demon King's Favor, which doesn't sound very holy at all. This sends the Monster King into a panic, calling Gon a hypocrite for making a deal with a demon, so now he's screaming for His Holiness the Pope to come save him from the consequences. Turns out its true form is just a pathetic little worm, now completely exposed and begging for its life, right as Gon's new power summons Oblivion's Grasp to finally squash the little pest for good. That final attack leaves a trail of sparkling dust, seemingly wiping the Monster King from existence, but Gon's demonic pact immediately summons its master, a skeletal being who materializes right before him. This new Demon King casually greets Gon, acting like they're old pals catching up after a while, and immediately starts mocking his pathetic state, saying it's a hilarious reminder of its own past failures. As a reward, the demon offers to lend Gon his power to crush his enemies, a totally trustworthy deal. But Gon's response is to just shatter the contract scroll, declaring that his debt is officially paid off. which the Demon King finds amusing, calling him heartless before offering some unsolicited, ominous advice. Turns out the advice is just a threat, claiming it's already seen exactly how Gon is going to die, and a massive vortex of dark energy erupts, seemingly aimed to fulfill that very prophecy right now, until the scene cuts to Gon standing alone on a cliff, leaving us wondering what just happened. This system confirms Gon's victory, but his man alone is now draining his HP at an alarming rate. Completely spent, he collapses to the ground, barely holding on after that insane final battle. He tries to contact some Hope coordinate, attempting to link his system with another transmigrator, but the connection fails spectacularly, leaving him completely isolated with no backup on the way. Meanwhile, our boy's system also hits a snag, failing to decompose his latest because it turns out the adventurer Rake is now just an inedible, very sad-looking statue. He hops off the poor guy, realizing he's not getting any XP from this particular kill, so he politely asks the stone corpse if he can just take his awesome hammer instead. After a moment of silence, he takes that as a yes and snags the powerful weapon for himself, which gives him the brilliant idea to help the other humans so he can hitch a ride to town. He zips through the forest, following the chaos right up to a massive wall of ice, which he immediately recognizes as the mage's handiwork, confirming the adventurers are close by. His first thought is pure greed, hoping the bird monster is dead so he can snag some free loot, but he decides to play it safe, sending out a little tendril to scout the area first, and the second it touches the ice, he gets a horrifying glimpse of what happened on the other side. Turns out the bird monster is standing over the mage's very dead, very skinless body, a grim confirmation that Cole's heroic sacrifice ended exactly how you'd expect it would. To add insult to injury, its snaketail is just casually chowing down on the poor guy's remains, and the beast's eyes flare up, clearly absorbing all that power from its latest meal, leaving our boy horrified, realizing the monster is leveling up and the last adventurer is probably next. Nia can only watch in horror as her own owl, Miwoo, dives in for the kill, swooping down with terrifying speed right on top of her and Piggy. Realizing her pet is a lost cause, she orders her boar to counterattack immediately, so Piggy unleashes another spiny back volley straight into the air, a desperate attempt to shoot the corrupted bird right out of the sky. Unfortunately, the owl's beak just starts glowing, transforming into a razor-sharp weapon, and it unleashes an iron beak gale as its body morphs into a tentacled nightmare. That attack creates a massive whirlwind that easily deflects the incoming quills, tearing a huge path of destruction right through the forest floor, and ripping entire trees out of the ground with its sheer, overwhelming power. Naya gets absolutely flattened by the whirlwind, left to contemplate her life choices in a pile of logs, having a full-blown crisis over how her own adorable pet could betray her so spectacularly. She tries to play healer for her injured boar, but Piggy seems to want absolutely nothing to do with it, while her corrupted owl powers up its weird tentacle things, clearly not done with the beatdown, diving straight down to finish her off with whatever that glowing appendage is supposed to be, which turns out to be a mind control attack that smacks her right in the soul. A quick look at its creepy, glowing eyes confirms her pet is now a full-time psychic puppet master, and suddenly she's standing in some kind of spooky, flooded ruin, a classic Mindscape scenario. Turns out her pet contract didn't break, which somehow let her dive right into Miwoo's spiritual world, where she spots a glowing winged being, because this situation just wasn't weird enough already. Inside her pet's mind, Naya finds a glowing Lord Angel holding the very owl that just betrayed her, leaving her completely baffled as to why a divine being is just chilling inside Miwoo's soul, and this angel calmly beckons her closer, which is definitely not a trap at all, until its voice overlaps with a monstrous roar, revealing the holy act is just a very thin disguise. Naya immediately starts panicking, realizing she's been lured into some kind of spiritual nightmare, while back in reality, Piggy is desperately trying to snap her out of her psychic coma because her corrupted owl is diving straight down to finish the job while she's completely defenseless. This mutated bird closes in for the kill, its weird eye growths practically sparkling with malice, when a green blur suddenly whips past, smacking the owl right out of its attack dive, and it's our boy, launching himself in a volley of swords to make a very dramatic entrance. His surprise sword volley absolutely shreds the corrupted owl, knocking it clean out of the air, which leaves Nia completely stunned because she recognizes her dead captain's weapons immediately. Turns out our boy is using his new giantification skill to swing Rake's hammer around like a flail, upgrading the weapon into a slime mold meteor hammer with his newfound body control. He figures if his old rocks were bullets, this new toy is basically a full-blown cannon. So he swings it down with incredible force, smashing the logs that were trapping Piggy underneath, freeing the injured boar from the debris with a single perfectly aimed strike. He then retracts his little slime arm, looking pretty proud of his heroic rescue mission. Naya immediately thanks the little guy for saving them, with Piggy snorting in agreement, and she gently scoops him up, holding the very confused-looking hero in her hands. Naya holds our boy, claiming she feels a familiar presence and has figured out his true identity, which is news to him, since he has absolutely no idea what she's talking about. She's convinced he's the reincarnated soul of her dead captain, back for a dramatic rescue, a theory he immediately rejects while getting squeezed to death in a hug of pure delusion. Unfortunately, their little reunion is cut short by the shadow of her corrupted pet looming over them, and that mutated owl is back for round 2, looking even more messed up than before. Nia immediately offers to juice up Piggy with mana for another desperate stand against her former friend, but our boy activates his own plan, spreading out into a massive sensory network on the ground, using his Pulsation Max skill to map the entire area and pinpoint the owl's exact location. He finds its weak spot and immediately shoots up a tendril, impaling the monster right through its glowing core. That direct hit leaves the corrupted owl completely skewered on his tendril, and the poor thing can only cry in agony, its weird eye growths twitching as it desperately tries to flap away from the attack that's got it pinned. While it's flailing around, our boy decides to follow up with another brutal hammer strike, realizing this is the perfect chance to end the fight for good. So he starts whipping the massive weapon around with his slime tendril, chanting his own name to power up for a full-blown kinematic cannon shot. That hammer connects with devastating force, turning the owl into a cloud of feathers and gore, and the impact is so strong it nails the monster's remains right to a nearby tree. He's left standing there, admitting he might have used just a little too much force. Naya stares at the splattered remains of her pet, completely ignoring the little hero who did it, and then recognizes our boy from the campfire, realizing he's the one she saw through Miwoo's vision. This leads her to the totally logical conclusion that he's been stalking her out of affection, and our boy seems pretty into this delusion, already imagining his big moment has finally arrived. So she drops to her knees in a magic circle, offering him an official pet pact contract, promising to nurture him well, which sounds like a pretty sweet deal for a little blob of goo, but his system immediately hits him with a massive warning. Signing the pact means losing his powers forever. He's left with a classic dilemma: keep his god-tier system or get a human master. But his first thought is about classic shonen heroines, which makes the choice surprisingly easy as he immediately daydreams about a sunset training montage, ready to become her loyal sidekick. He's already picturing them as a champion battle duo, with him as her ridiculously buff slime partner, and in his head, she's already a celebrity adventurer, all thanks to his amazing pet skills, of course. This fantasy quickly evolves into him becoming a handsome human idol, because why not? And together they'll become the ultimate power couple destined to defeat the great demon king. This delusion then escalates to a full-blown marriage proposal, because this is a shonen romance now, which of course ends with a fairy tale wedding, with Piggy looking on approvingly. Back in reality, he's completely sold on this life, having already scripted their entire future together, so with his mind made up, he eagerly prepares to accept the life-altering pet contract, right as the injured Naya asks if he accepts, holding him gently in her hands, which is when the horrifying reality of giving up his system finally hits him like a truck. Piggy just snorts, clearly unimpressed and ready to charge right back into the fight, so Naya throws down some support magic, a circle of wind's demise, to trap the beast, which swirls around the bird monster, a creature that's looking pretty rough but still standing tall, and its snake tail starts to grotesquely regenerate, sprouting eyeballs from the mangled stump, and a full set of teeth quickly follows, because this thing just refuses to stay down. Seeing this, Piggy immediately charges in for another spiky tackle, not giving it a second to recover. Our boy freaks out, realizing the head he just smashed is already growing back and tries to warn Piggy, but it's too late, as the monster easily sidesteps the boar's reckless charge. This main bird body immediately counters, its claws glowing as it prepares a nasty-looking slash, unleashing a nasty atavistic ray that leaves poor Piggy completely stunned and caught in the blast. That nasty ray hits Piggy dead on, devolving the poor boar into a useless flopping fish creature which just flops around pathetically, leaving our boy to realize this is some seriously high-tier magic, and he figures out the bird monster isn't the real threat, but just a puppet for someone else. Right on cue, some new villain starts monologuing about how his underlings are completely incompetent. Turns out the real mastermind is a holy knight named Merlin, who's annoyed he has to clean up this mess personally, and he notes the imprisonment barrier is finally gone, which is apparently very bad news for someone, because now he's free to hunt down Gon himself, promising the knight won't be escaping this time. So he unleashes a massive abyss magic spell called Tempest Wing, kicking up a huge whirlwind, sending a massive blade of wind energy ripping right through the entire forest to find his target, which unfortunately leaves Naya and our boy caught in the crossfire, completely exhausted and battered. Our boy realizes the real villain was another human who just body-snatched the owl and teleported away, which leaves him feeling completely useless, a throwback to his early days of being a helpless blob. But his pity party is cut short by a sudden surge of rage, deciding he's going to get revenge for Nia. He furiously launches a piece of himself into the forest, a purely symbolic tantrum against an enemy long gone. Meanwhile, somewhere else entirely, the Night Gon is finally getting a moment to breathe after his own insane battle. His system confirms the fan alone is paid off, but his HP is critical and his left arm is basically shredded. Ignoring the obvious, he orders his system to find the Hope coordinate and link up with another transmigrator, but direct contact is impossible, though it can sense a signal and he's already heading right for it. Gon knows the Holy See is sending a cleanup crew, so he has to grab the newbie and bolt before they arrive. So despite his injuries, he starts moving, leaving a bloody trail as he races to find his only potential ally. Our boy's revenge quest immediately hits a snag when he spots what he thinks is the bird monster's long neck. So he winds up his stolen hammer, ready to deliver some well-deserved, albeit misguided, justice, and brings it down with a spectacular whack right on the poor guy's head. He immediately realizes something is off, since monsters don't usually wear full plate armor, and it turns out he just brained some random knight, mistaking his helmet tassel for a neck. He offers a very awkward apology for the friendly fire, hoping the guy isn't actually dead, but the knight suddenly springs to life, grabbing our hero with a bone-crushing grip, and accuses him of killing his companions, since he smells Nia's blood all over the little guy. Just as he's about to get squished, his system finally connects with the knight's own interface, leaving Gon completely stunned to find out this little blob is another transmigrator. Our boy is completely floored, realizing he's not the only transmigrator in this entire world. Turns out Gon summoned him here with a hope coordinate to help fight a corrupt church, and our hero connects the dots to the dead adventurers, feeling way too weak to save Nia now. Gon gives him a pep talk, saying he also started from nothing and just followed the system's quests. Then he drops another bombshell, admitting he's not even human, which is why he's always armored up. Our boy is understandably confused, asking what the hell this guy actually is then. And Gon reveals he's a goblin, one of the most hated creatures in this entire world. Our boy immediately pictures the ugliest goblin imaginable, roasting him for being so pitifully weak. But Gon just takes off his helmet, revealing he's less gross monster and more anime protagonist, leaving our hero absolutely fuming over how unfairly cool this supposed goblin actually is. Gon dismisses the cool factor, arguing our boy's tiny body is way better for blending in with humans. But our hero is too busy protesting the unfair character design until Gon warns the church's top killer is coming, revealing his grand plan is to synchronize and upload his entire combat skill set right into our boy. This system connection immediately succeeds, and our hero realizes he's about to get a legendary power-up because Gon admits he's completely out of trump cards and needs a partner for the fight ahead. Our boy asks why he hates the church, getting a bombshell reveal about their plan to sacrifice the entire world, leaving him completely baffled as to how they plan on pulling off a full-blown planetary sacrifice. So Gon begins his tragic backstory, explaining he was transmigrated as the weakest goblin cub imaginable, forced to survive in a dark mine until his system awakened and had him slaughter every last goblin there. He then questions his own identity, insisting that despite his monstrous start, his soul has always been human. He continues his story, explaining he rescued a group of heroines from a truly grim fate, and our boy totally relates, agreeing that even in a monster body, his soul is still human. But then he catches on to Gon's racial skill, hoping it's not what he thinks it is. Turns out Gon's special power is dual cultivation, which levels him up by getting busy with adventurers. A warrior boosts his HP, a mage raises his MP, and he gets a ton of EXP from the whole ordeal, using this very convenient power-up method to build a life and start families with all of them. Our boy is left absolutely fuming, realizing this whole backstory is just one massive flex. But the mood shifts as Gon admits going to the capital was a fatal mistake for his family, flashing back to some horrifying creature dropping from the ceiling to hunt him down. And the memory clearly still haunts him as the skill transfer continues in the present. His flashback reveals the church's top assassin, a creepy-looking guy named Merlin, finally showing his face, who immediately unleashes some high-level abyss magic, a circle of wind's demise, to trap him, and the spell slams down, carving a massive crater into the ground and pinning Gon in the center. Merlin taunts him, revealing the Pope himself ordered the hit, but he's curious about Gon's power, admitting he's impressed Gon managed to kill his supposedly undying chimera experiment from earlier. Meanwhile, Gon's system is screaming at him that his armor is completely busted and he needs to run, which Merlin somehow notices, now getting greedy about stealing the system for himself after the kill. Gon just spits back that Merlin is a monster for creating that chimera through countless sacrifices, but the villain finds this hilarious, dismissing his morality before summoning a volley of energy projectiles and launches them straight at Gon, ready to end this little chat once and for all. Our boy watches as Merlin examines the slime-covered rocks he just caught, clearly unimpressed, and he taunts Gon, asking if this pathetic little monster is his last desperate move. This assassin then uses a gaze skill that completely paralyzes Arb, making him feel totally exposed, which seems to genuinely surprise Merlin for just a split second, until he realizes it was all a distraction as Gon's afterimage fades away behind him. But Gon never ran, instead reappearing to unleash a weak point break attack from above. So Merlin immediately counters with a geometric inferno, trapping the Goblin Knight in a cage of fire. Our boy watches in horror, thinking his new ally just got instantly incinerated, while Merlin gloats that physical attacks are useless if Gon can't even get close enough to land one. But Gon reveals his special skill works on magic too, shattering the inferno with a single punch. Gon's attack was just a feint, letting him get close enough to grab the assassin from behind, and he locks Merlin in a death grip, knowing this is his one and only chance to end this. This Goblin Knight declares that if he's going down, he's taking the church's top dog with him, as his system activates Last Stand, locking his HP at 1 for a full minute of invincibility. With his final moment secured, he activates a terrifying skill called the Final Accord, which sends Merlin into a full-blown panic, screaming that Gon has no idea what he's just done. This system confirms this is a one-way trip, a skill that will completely erase his body and soul, but Gon couldn't care less, activating the Self-Destruct Pact to bind them both in a deadly spell. This magic immediately starts ripping Merlin's soul right out of his body in a flash of light, as Gon uses his last moments to tell our boy the mission is his now, and to never trust the church. Our boy starts having a full-blown crisis, realizing he's supposed to save the world now that his carry is gone. As Gon's self-destruct pact erupts in a massive flash of green energy, consuming both him and the assassin, leaving him just enough time to suggest his whole purpose was just to summon our boy here. This entire area is completely vaporized by the blast, leaving nothing but a massive smoking crater, and only a tiny piece of our hero survives, slowly pulling himself back together from the dust. He can only cry out for his fallen friend, completely alone in the middle of the devastation, but a monstrous winged figure suddenly descends, cursing Gon for ruining his entire mission. Meanwhile, in some dark chamber, 5 mystical life port candles are suddenly extinguished all at once, revealing Merlin was forced to possess a low-level monster corpse just to survive the blast. So now he's taking his frustration out on our boy, who immediately throws up a hand to defend himself. Our boy declares he's inheriting Gon's will and settling the score for everyone involved, cleverly burying a small clone as an escape route in case this heroic Skdan goes sideways. Merlin is completely baffled by this random blob, assuming it's just some leftover pet of Gon's, so he decides our little hero will have to do as a replacement punching bag for all his rage, unleashing that same atavistic ray that turned poor Piggy into a useless fish earlier. This attack hits dead on, and our boy is completely fine, just looking confused by the light show. This leaves Merlin wondering why his ultimate devolution magic suddenly has all the impact of a wet noodle, and he throws a full-blown tantrum, refusing to believe he can't even squash a low-level monster. Our boy realizes Merlin is basically running on fumes and decides to use this info gap to his advantage, right as the enraged assassin launches his entire monster body forward in a desperate screaming tackle. Our boy's surprise attack sends Merlin's monster form spiraling through the air, a pretty solid first impression. Merlin throws a fit, screaming about how he'll burn the world down once he's back at full power, and he immediately starts powering up, his chest glowing like a furnace to prove he's not bluffing, unleashing a pseudo-dragon breath that looks way too powerful for a guy running on empty. That massive fire blast completely engulfs our hero, who's basically just a tiny target on the ground, and the whole area gets absolutely torched, leaving nothing but scorched earth in its wake. Merlin's monster looks over the crispy remains, expecting to find a well-done slime patty, but the little puddle on the ground isn't moving, seemingly confirming the kill for a moment. Right as he's celebrating, his own body starts bulging in a very unnatural way, and a brand new snake head bursts out from his back, looking suspiciously healthy. Merlin's monster body erupts in a blinding flash of light, its silhouette shifting into something new, leaving our boy to wonder if this guy is actually evolving right in the middle of their fight. Turns out it's a full-blown transformation from a snake secretary bird into a feathered serpent dragon, a majestic new form that looks way too cool for a villain who just got his butt kicked. Without another word, the newly upgraded monster just flies off into the distance, abandoning the battle entirely, which leaves our hero completely alone in the middle of a smoking crater, feeling pretty lost. His system then reveals the skill transfer from Gon was a bust, failing on almost every combat skill, but he did manage to download a bunch of non-combat knowledge like cooking and forging, a small consolation prize. He's left feeling completely empty, realizing he'd rather be a carefree slime than have all this new power. But he pulls himself together, using his new search skill to scan the remains of Gon's armor. He spreads his body out like a web, grabbing every last piece of Gon's shattered armor, and begins pulling all the metal fragments back together, piece by painful piece, essentially becoming the living glue holding the entire suit together from the inside out. With the weight of the world on his gooey shoulders, he vows to carry on Gon's mission, and the newly formed Slime Knight slowly gets to its feet, looking surprisingly intimidating for a blob in a can. He starts filling out the armor, forming a hand inside the gauntlet to get a feel for it. Then he shapes a leg, trying to mimic a proper humanoid form for the very first time, figuring that even without a real body, he should be able to pilot this thing just fine, and for a glorious second, he actually looks the part, standing tall like a legendary hero until he immediately stumbles, proving that walking on 2 legs is way harder than it looks. Our boy's first attempt at being a knight is a total disaster, since he can't even coordinate his own limbs, and after a solid minute of flailing, he face plants hard, proving the whole hero gig is a lot of work. He gives up on the armor, deciding it's way smarter to just hide before the church sends another cleanup crew, so he absorbs the entire suit and hammer into his body, turning Gon's legacy into a portable inventory. Back in his stealthy slime form, he zips off into the woods to find a place to lay low, settling down in a quiet spot to finally process the absolute chaos of the last few hours. He starts sorting through the massive info dump Gon gave him, pulling up a brand new world map, which reveals a ton of new locations and confirms he's currently stuck in the swamp forest. Turns out the royal capital has portals everywhere, all conveniently managed by the very church he needs to avoid, which gives him the brilliant idea to just find one and warp straight to the capital himself. Our boy takes stock of his loot, realizing his plan to storm the capital is a bit ambitious, since his only real assets are Gon's busted gear and Nia's very dead body. He weighs his options, landing on the only logical, if horrifying, way to get stronger, figuring he can't bring her back, so giving her a purpose is better than letting her rot. With that settled, he begins the grim process of absorbing her for experience points, a final tearful goodbye as his slime form completely envelops her body. In his mind, he sees her smiling one last time, as if thanking him for everything, and he cries back his own farewell, promising her sacrifice won't be in vain. This hardens his resolve, swearing he'll bring down the entire evil church for what they've done, and the system confirms a level up and a brand new parasitic domination skill. With the sun rising, our boy decides it's time to test out his brand new morally questionable powers, and his first unsuspecting victim is a random frog just trying to enjoy its morning lily pad. He locks on with his danger sense, giving the poor amphibian absolutely no warning for what's coming, and the frog's instincts kick in a second too late as our boy launches a high-speed projectile. Just to be sure, he follows up with a full-blown plasmodial barrage, completely overwhelming the tiny target, and after the overkill, he approaches the very dead frog, ready to test out his new skill from Naya. Turns out, parasitic domination lets him turn corpses into fully controllable puppets, a pretty grim upgrade, so he spits a piece of himself right into the frog's mouth, beginning the horrifying takeover process. This skill immediately activates as our boy focuses his will on the new host body, and his parasitic tendrils begin weaving through the frog's neural network, claiming it as his own. His parasitic goo immediately spreads through the frog's nervous system, lighting it up from the inside, and the dead amphibian's leg suddenly twitches, showing the first signs of unholy reanimation, which then sits right up, leaving our boy's main body completely stunned that it actually worked. His system confirms the new corpse puppet is ready, though he's already hit his control limit of 1. Now for part 2, he decides to transfer his actual consciousness right into his new meat suit, activating domination and focusing his entire will on the little slime core inside the frog, and just like that, his vision snaps over, seeing the world from a brand new perspective. This puppet has zero durability but comes with a full set of frog-themed combat skills, a nice bonus. He's amazed by the wide field of vision, getting a full panoramic view of the swamp for the first time, and since he inherited its muscle memory, there's no awkward learning curve for his new body. He's got his new frog puppet up and running, looking surprisingly natural for a reanimated corpse. But he realizes his main body goes on autopilot while he's away, a pretty major security flaw. Deciding to worry about that later, he gets hyped to take his new meat suit for a joyride, and his first instinct is to immediately try and snatch a fly right out of the air, unleashing a tongue fist that completely misses, proving this body needs some serious practice. Still, he's having the time of his life, finding the whole puppet experience absolutely exhilarating, so he starts hopping all over the forest, getting a feel for his brand new legs, until he spots a snail and decides it's time for his first official hunt as a predator. But as he pounces, a weird tadpole-like signal suddenly shoots out of his puppet's head, and his system confirmed the connection is lost, leaving him completely disconnected from his new toy. His brand new frog puppet suddenly face plants mid-hop, the connection completely severed without warning. Back at base, our boy realizes there's a pretty strict leash on his new remote control toy, figuring out he can't let the puppet stray more than 30 meters from his main body. But as he gets closer, the frog suddenly springs back to life with a glowing sigil on its head, and it starts hopping around on its own, leaving him completely baffled by the sudden reboot. After a moment of confusion, he has a brilliant light bulb moment about how this all works. Turns out the puppet has 2 modes, full manual control and a new automatic setting, so when it's in range, it just runs on pure instinct instead of his direct commands. He immediately sees this in action as the frog's AI tries and fails spectacularly to eat a snail, quickly concluding this automatic mode has all the tactical genius of a particularly dumb brick. Deciding his frog puppet's AI is a total bust, our boy recalls it to rethink his strategy, which gives him the grand idea of parasitizing that Dragon Merlin escaped in for a serious upgrade. He's already dreaming of a personal monster army to crush the church, but first he needs more corpses, so he starts slithering through the swamp, hunting for his next unsuspecting test subject. When a high-pressure water jet suddenly blasts him out of nowhere, taking a solid chunk of his HP, he's absolutely furious about the sneak attack, demanding the culprit reveal itself immediately. Our boy assumes it's some kind of crab, already planning to turn the attacker into his next puppet, until the culprit reveals itself to be a tiny, completely unimpressive-looking pufferfish. Feeling deeply insulted, he vows to show this fish the true power of a level 50 monster lord, but the pufferfish just ignores him, puffing up its cheeks to unleash another water gun attack. Our boy easily dodges the pathetic water jets, looking more annoyed than threatened by the tiny fish's assault, so he immediately counters with a plasmodial barrage, spitting a volley of slime bullets right back at it. That attack connects perfectly, revealing the little guy was just one of a whole school of them hiding nearby, and he scoffs at their hit-and-run tactics, deciding it's time to stop playing around with his food. He spreads his body out into a massive morph net, ready to catch the entire group in one clean sweep, which works perfectly, trapping the pufferfish before they even have a chance to swim away. He hoists up his massive haul, completely shocked by how many he caught as the EXP just rolls in, which immediately gives him a brand new parasitic puppet with a full set of fish-themed combat skills. Wasting no time, he immediately deploys his new power on an unsuspecting crab just minding its own business, dropping a piece of himself right on its head to begin another horrifying puppet takeover. That parasitic goo immediately latches onto the unsuspecting crab, ready for a full-blown hostile takeover, and he starts drilling right through the gaps in its shell because knocking is for chumps. This parasite skill lets him seep right into its body, which is just as horrifying as it sounds, and just like that, he's got full dominion, his tendrils spreading through its entire nervous system. His system confirms the new swamp crab puppet is ready, complete with a water gun and mud foam, while his frog puppet is off on its own adventure, stumbling upon a massive hornet's nest, which immediately summons a full-blown swarm because of course it does. But our boy's frog suit is ready for a fight, powering up an empowered tongue attack, unleashing it like a massive whip that just tears right through the angry insect cloud, and he starts racking up EXP like crazy, proving even a dead frog can be a total powerhouse. His frog puppet looks ready to burst after swallowing half the swarm, but the fight isn't over yet as he tries to charge up some kind of massive acid bomb against 2 remaining magical bees. But he quickly realizes this one-trick pony isn't going to cut it against actual spellcasters, so he pulls his consciousness out of the amphibian, deciding it's time for a tactical switch. Our boy immediately jumps into his brand new crab puppet, ready to bring in the heavy artillery, and this new meat suit starts foaming at the mouth, powering up its own special attack, unleashing a powerful water gun to try and douse the angry insects before they can counter. Too late though, as the bees are already conjuring a full-blown firestorm with their magic, and his crab puppet suddenly sputters out, completely drained of its internal moisture mid-attack. That perfect timing leaves him completely defenseless as the bees unleash their fiery payload. That firestorm hits with full force, completely engulfing his brand new crab puppet in the blast, leaving both his frog and crab meat suits totally fried and out of commission for good. This two magic bees buzz victoriously, thinking they've just wiped out their only opponents, right as a surprise water jet slams into one of them from completely out of nowhere, revealing our boy had a third puppet, the little pufferfish, waiting in ambush the whole time. This remaining bee immediately spots the tiny fish, zeroing in on the new threat, which is when our boy's main body decides it's time to cut his losses on the puppets, figuring they're totally disposable and he can just find more corpses to control later on. But the lone bee wasn't just buzzing, it was calling in the actual boss of this turf, as a whole new squad of elite hornets appears, throwing up a massive beeswax barrier. Our boy smashes right through the barrier, claiming his puppets were just a warm-up act, and immediately follows up with a plasmatic cannon, firing Gon's hammer at the nest, but it's just a distraction, letting him splatter his main body all over the hive surface. His real plan is to use his search skill, mapping the entire nest from the inside, and he instantly pinpoints his true target, latching right onto the terrified queen bee. With the queen in his grasp, he activates his parasite skill to take her over completely, figuring if he controls the leader, he gets the entire hive as a sweet package deal. This takeover is a success, giving him a brand new Hornet Queen puppet with a hive mind skill, which he immediately uses to send out a pulse, ordering all her fallen children to rise. And just like that, the entire swarm of dead hornets begins reanimating for their new master. His brand new zombie army isn't responding to their queen, leaving him completely baffled, until he realizes the hive mind dies with the original queen, making his grand plan totally useless, so he immediately ditches the royalty and possesses one of the more useful magic user bees instead, which nets him a new Hornet Mage puppet with some handy fire and levitation skills. With his new strategy in mind, he gathers all his reanimated minions at a nearby cliffside, officially christening them the Slime Mold Squad as they await his command, and with all the flair of a supervillain, he dramatically orders them to assemble. First up is the frog puppet, which he officially names Waji for the occasion, followed by the crab puppet Crabsook, whose upgraded pincers get a nod of approval, and finally, the little pufferfish is dubbed Xiaotun, completing his new personal army. Our boy's new bee puppet has gone missing, leaving him totally confused about where it went, and he turns to his other minions, realizing he must have accidentally released its control, which leads to the horrifying realization that its automatic AI must have kicked in nearby right as his frog puppet croaks, revealing it just ate the bee for a quick snack. He immediately lays down the first rule of the Slime Mold Squad before punching the frog senseless, forcing Waji to spit out the half-digested bee, which is surprisingly still functional despite the ordeal. With that little bit of internal discipline handled, he proudly declares his combat squad finally complete. He assembles the whole team, a motley crew of reanimated swamp critters ready for their assignments, immediately designating Crabsook as the official tank, complete with some imaginary heavy armor, while Xiaotun the pufferfish becomes the marksman, looking like a Clint Eastwood-style gunslinger. This bee puppet gets the mage role, complete with a tiny wizard hat and everything, while Waji the frog is now the official assassin, looking way too pleased with his new job title, and of course our boy casts himself as the commander-in-chief and strongest support. He immediately pits his new squad against a mental simulation of Merlin's dragon form in an RPG battle, where the imaginary boss immediately targets the bee mage with a massive trample attack. So our boy orders his crab, Siaju, to jump in and use its carapace defense. This crab puppet braces for impact, raising its shell to intercept the devastating blow, and it actually manages to block the claw head-on, holding its ground for a split second. But the sheer force of the attack is too much, shattering the crab's shell completely, so just as its HP starts to drain, our boy swoops in with a cytoplasmic injection to heal his tank. This healing goo keeps his crab tank in the fight, buying just enough time for a counterattack, so he spots an opening in the simulation, ordering his ranged puppets to unleash everything they've got. His B-Mage and Pufferfish marksmen immediately power up their respective special attacks, unleashing a full-blown magical barrage that peppers the imaginary dragon with damage. But the ranged assault only stuns it, so he sends in Waji the Frog for the killing blow, and the little assassin zips in, using its tongue to land a critical hit right on a weak spot. This drops the boss's health bar into the red, leaving it completely staggered and vulnerable, and his puppets start celebrating, but our boy cuts them off, telling them to focus on the finish, because now is the time to end this little training exercise once and for all. With that, the entire slime mold squad charges in for the final glorious takedown. Their combined assault lands in a massive screen-shaking explosion, completely overwhelming the simulated boss, and the system confirms the imaginary feathered serpent dragon has been totally defeated. With the training exercise a resounding success, the whole slime mold squad celebrates their victory, but our boy knows the real work is just getting started. Looking down at his new army, and without any further delay, he officially kicks off their first real-world training session. His puppets line up at the water's edge, patiently waiting to hunt down their very first target, when a tiny creature starts bouncing across the river, looking like the perfect warm-up. Turns out it's a level 9 bounce-house mouse, using its tail like a pogo stick to get around. Just as they're about to pounce, some new predator suddenly ambushes their target from the side, revealing a weird cat humanoid thing that snatches the mouse right out from under them. Our boy's first training mission gets immediately poached by some weird, lumpy rock cat hiding nearby, which turns out to be a mimic stone cat that looks way too proud of its stolen meal. But its victory lap is cut short by a sudden, very panicked meow because a massive giant swamp mosquito just dropped in to turn the hunter into the hunted. That thing's abdomen immediately starts glowing as it drains the poor cat completely dry, and with its gruesome meal finished, the mosquito casually detaches from the shriveled husk. This now mummified cat is left to rot as the giant insect flies off with its prize, buzzing over the swamp while it searches for the perfect spot to settle down, and eventually it lands right on the surface of the water, mission seemingly accomplished. Turns out its whole goal was to lay eggs that immediately become fish food, completing the circle of life. That giant mosquito lands on the water, immediately crackling with some kind of electrical energy, and unleashes a massive electric discharge, zapping every single fish in the immediate area, leaving the entire school and the mosquito itself floating there completely fried. But their sacrifice wasn't in vain, because some massive catfish just gulped down the entire buffet, a level 44 predator that looks way too smug about its free pre-cooked meal. Suddenly, the catfish starts glowing with an overwhelming amount of power, lighting up the entire swamp, and our boy watches from a safe distance, completely baffled by the sudden light show. He realizes this is another evolution, just like the one he saw with Merlin's monster, which transforms the predator into a way more intimidating thunder catfish at level 52, and without wasting a second, the new beast unleashes a devastating thunder flash into the water. Our boy watches the electrifying aftermath, completely speechless from his hiding spot in the trees, and he's starting to think these sudden monster evolutions are happening a little too often for comfort. Right on cue, his system starts downloading a massive encyclopedia entry on the world's background, which reveals he's in an S-rank danger zone, where monster evolution is just a normal Tuesday. Turns out this swamp is crawling with everything from weaklings to absolute king-level nightmares, and a flashback reveals Gon single-handedly wiped out the previous king and his entire army here. Gon's rampage completely reset the ecosystem, forcing the land to pump itself full of magic to recover, which means all the mid-tier survivors got a massive power boost with no competition around, kicking off a battle royale for the now vacant throne as everyone tries to become the new top dog. With the info dump complete, our boy finally gets why this whole swamp is a chaotic power leveling zone. Our boy starts wondering if his new puppets can evolve, confused why that catfish felt so much stronger than him, and his system basically says levels aren't everything, since a level 100 mouse is still just a snack for a dragon. Right then, a massive commotion pulls his attention, as that same catfish is now getting into another brawl, so he slithers over to check out the action, curious to see who's picking a fight with the new top dog, and he's completely stunned by the absolute beatdown that's currently unfolding. Turns out the newly evolved catfish is getting completely wrecked by some kind of massive snake-lizard hybrid, which is revealed to be a level 60 swamp crocodile that just snaps its jaws shut on its opponent. This new apex predator glares around, establishing itself as the undisputed king of the swamp, before suddenly launching a volley of deadly spikes right out of its own body, which impales his little pufferfish puppet, basically delivering a brand new corpse right to his door. It seems the crocodile's spike volley was a suicide move, leaving it twitching on the ground, and our boy decides the two massive corpses are too wrecked for puppetry, so it's time for lunch. He immediately gets a nasty shock from all the residual electricity still crackling in its body, but he powers right through the pain, consuming a frankly ridiculous amount of monster meat. This triggers a nutritional overload, giving him a massive HP buff as he absorbs his dead puppet, and he activates his decomposed skill, turning into a giant bloated digestion machine. This system starts flooding with notifications as he gains a ton of EXP and a new lightning resistance, melting the two apex predators down to nothing but a pile of clean bones in the water. All that high-quality protein is enough to push him straight to level 51, feeling fantastic, so he decides to make the most of this chaotic ecosystem and keep on feasting. With his new power-leveling plan in full swing, our boy starts clearing out entire sections of the swamp, basically becoming a living lawnmower that consumes everything in its path for a steady stream of EXP, and he's absolutely loving the grind, watching his experience points skyrocket with every monster he dissolves. His rampage eventually brings him to the edge of a massive river, which gives him an idea. Across the water is a much lusher, more dangerous-looking mangrove forest, a prime new hunting ground. He figures a place like that has to be crawling with much stronger monsters, and therefore, better loot. So with all the caution of a brick thrown at a window, he decides to just dive right in. He launches himself into the murky water without a second thought, ready to cross the river, which was a terrible idea because dozens of hungry eyes immediately lock onto him from below, and a whole school of level 19 piranhas instantly swarms him, tearing his body to shreds. Our boy is immediately furious as his HP plummets, realizing he's being swarmed by a death squad of piranhas, and he tries to heal by eating them, but the math just isn't working out in his favor at all. He's completely surrounded by thousands of the little monsters, and his health is just tanking, since his movements are way too slow in the water, leaving him unable to out-heal the damage from the endless biting. His system then chimes in with a perfectly timed lecture on how being a giant target isn't always a good thing, which our boy completely ignores, since he's a little busy getting eaten alive right now. So in a last-ditch effort, he unleashes a massive plasmodial barrage, sacrificing a huge chunk of his own health, which is just enough to blast him back to the riverbank heavily damaged and a fraction of his former size. This river is now completely clear, but the victory cost him dearly, leaving him totally drained. He immediately starts planning his recovery, asking if he can get big again. But the system says his timer is still running down, so he just starts rolling through the forest, dissolving everything in his path for a sweet EXP boost, and our boy is looking pretty pleased with himself, having bulked up from his all-you-can-eat buffet. He notices the plants here grow insanely fast, realizing the whole swamp is basically a magical protein shake, which gives him a brilliant idea, figuring his real strength isn't claws or fire, but endless consumption. He's officially entered the grinding phase, planning an infinite loop of eating, absorbing, and evolving, and in his head, he's already picturing a month-long binge that ends with his mold army swarming the capital, until the system chimes in to pop his little power fantasy bubble, telling him that plan is a total bust. Our boy is completely baffled, demanding to know why his genius strategy won't work as the system loads an insert, which explains there's a little thing called diminishing returns, and the higher his level, the less EXP he gets from weaklings. He finally gets why he hasn't leveled up, realizing his endless grinding is suddenly becoming super inefficient. Our boy starts grilling the system for some actual EXP numbers, tired of its vague progress reports, but the system basically says it's too lazy to do the math, right as his power overload buff expires, which sends him shrinking back to his original size, leaving a pile of indigestible bones behind. He's still annoyed by the system's terrible customer service, even with its recent smart updates, so he just tells the AI to shut up and take his orders from now on. Back in his tiny form, he immediately starts another all-you-can-eat buffet on the forest floor, and then promptly explodes, spitting out all the junk he can't actually process into pure energy. Looking at the massive bone pile, he finally gets that he needs to hunt stronger prey to keep leveling, his eyes immediately falling on the dangerous mangrove forest across the river, a perfect new hunting ground. With the tide conveniently out, the path to his next power leveling zone is now wide open. Our boy slithers into the new mangrove forest, scoping out the local wildlife for his next meal, and immediately starts complaining about how gross all the mud is because priorities. He then spots a bunch of suspicious-looking holes dotting the entire mud flat, clearly a good sign. So naturally, he starts taunting whatever's inside, basically inviting them to come out and get eaten. This local wildlife immediately responds by spitting a high-velocity mud ball right in his face, which leaves him more annoyed than hurt, but his pride has definitely taken a solid hit. Absolutely furious, he dives right into one of the holes to settle this little dispute personally, and the ground immediately erupts as he starts a full-blown brawl with whatever's down there, until some poor fish thing gets launched out of the hole like a cannonball, landing hard. Turns out it's just a mud skipper, and our boy gloats that it has zero chance on dry land. That mud skipper lands with a thud, looking completely stunned to be on dry land, and it immediately lets out a massive battle cry, which sounds suspiciously like calling for backup. Our boy realizes this little fish isn't just a solo act, which is never a good sign, because right on cue, an entire army of them bursts from the mud, completely surrounding him. He quickly deduces this is a social collective, making them way more dangerous than a single mob, but he just scoffs at their numbers game, asking if they seriously thought he came alone. With all the drama of a shonen protagonist, he unleashes his own summoning jutsu, which erupts in a massive cloud of smoke, perfectly setting the stage for his grand entrance. From the smoke emerges his entire slime mold squad, all reanimated and ready for their first group battle, and our boy is feeling incredibly cool, finally able to bring his favorite manga tropes to life. This mud skipper army immediately opens fire, unleashing a coordinated volley of high-speed mud shots, which rains down on his squad, completely plastering his poor crab puppet in sticky projectiles. and the mud hardens instantly, trapping Crabsook. But our boy just scoffs since his main body is immune. Instead of pressing the advantage, the fish things just stand there, looking weirdly determined, before the entire army suddenly charges forward in a perfectly synchronized wave of aggression. This sudden coordinated assault catches our boy completely off guard, not expecting this level of teamwork, which sends him into a ridiculous fantasy where they all bow down and beg to join his crew. He immediately snaps out of it, reminding himself his daydreams are basically a curse that guarantees failure. Meanwhile, the mudskippers start coiling up like springs, preparing for a brand new kind of attack, and then launch themselves into the air, turning their entire bodies into living, bouncing projectiles. Our boy mocks their weird formation, asking if they're putting on some kind of show for him, because their big performance involves curling up into bizarre, high-speed mud donuts, which leaves him completely baffled, calling them some kind of ridiculous chainsaw fish. And the entire army launches themselves like living saw blades right at his poor crab puppet. Those mud wheels slam into Crabsook, tearing chunks right out of its shell on impact, as the system confirms its durability is plummeting, leaving the puppet on the verge of collapse. So our boy immediately sends in a cytoplasmic injection, basically turning himself into a living health pack. Then he pulls a consciousness shift, jumping right into his puffer fish puppet for a counterattack, powering up a brand new move as his little fish shoot grows a set of massive steel teeth, unleashing a steel fang cut that chomps one of the mudskippers clean in half for some easy EXP. His frog puppet stares down the incoming wave of living projectiles, not even flinching at the chaos, and Waji digs its heels into the mud, bracing itself for the inevitable impact from the mudskipper army. With a mighty croak, the little assassin leaps right into the thick of the spinning fish blades, immediately unleashing a tong fist and whipping it out like a fleshy red battering ram, which connects perfectly, splattering one of the mudskippers into a bloody mess on the ground. But the rest of the swarm just keeps coming, kicking up a massive dust cloud as they close in, forcing our boy to take direct control since the puppet's automatic AI is completely useless in a real fight. Even with manual piloting, the sheer number of attackers starts to overwhelm his poor frog puppet, and one of the spinning fish scores a direct hit while he's trying to charge up a stronger attack. So he instantly bails, shifting his consciousness out of the frog and into his pufferfish puppet instead. With the mudskipper spinning in, his bee puppet takes point for the counteroffensive, immediately throwing up a triple beeswax barrier to create a super sticky defensive wall, which works like a charm, catching the spinning fish mid-air and gumming up their attack completely. Realizing he needs to lock them down for good, our boy cooks up a brand new strategy. His bee puppet starts spinning its stinger like a propeller, gathering up some kind of energy, which turns out to be a honey convergence, pulling the entire army into a sticky vortex. This mudskippers get sucked into a giant, inescapable ball of honey, totally immobilized, and now that the fish are trapped, it's time to bring in the finisher for this group project, so his pufferfish puppet, Xiaotun, gets the signal to step up to the plate, immediately using Inflate and turning into a spiky death ball to finish the job. With the mudskippers trapped, our boy orders his bee puppet to go all out for the big finish, and its honey convergence completely engulfs the fish army, leaving them hopelessly stuck in the muck. His bee puppet looks way too smug about its handiwork, having perfectly set the stage for a massacre. Then it channels some beginner magic, preparing to light up the whole sticky mess with a spark spell, which immediately ignites the honey, turning the entire battlefield into a massive fiery death trap. This system absolutely floods with notifications as his squad racks up a ridiculous amount of EXP from the wipeout, and our boy's main body just watches the carnage, probably feeling like a genius for this whole team-up idea. Turns out the bee was the MVP, while Waji the frog is flexing over its single solitary kill, when suddenly, Xiaotun the pufferfish just blasts the crab puppet with a random jet of water, right as our boy's main body picks up a delicious scent, completely distracted from his squad's weird antics. Turns out that delicious smell is the honey-roasted fish, which his system immediately adds to his cooking skill tree. And even his puppets are buzzing with excitement, apparently wanting a piece of the victory feast despite being zombies. So feeling generous for once, he tells the whole squad to dig in and celebrate their big win. His system then confirms that decomposing cooked food yields way more EXP, a very handy discovery for his grind, but the celebration is cut short when he senses a new threat, immediately ordering everyone back into battle formation, because the level 49 Mudskipper boss has just arrived, and it does not look happy about the massacre. His system confirms it's a commander type, but our boy just scoffs, figuring the same strategy will work twice. Then he turns to rally his troops, only to find them completely ignoring his orders to keep stuffing their faces. Meanwhile, the boss makes its move, coiling up its tail like a massive mud-caked spring, and it lunges forward, swallowing his entire distracted squad in one single, absolutely humiliating gulp. Realizing wireless is unreliable, our boy decides to go wired by piloting the boss from the inside, which lets him transmit commands instantly, turning his entire squad into a perfectly synced unit, and he's absolutely loving his new puppet jutsu, feeling like a total anime protagonist. This poor mudskipper boss, however, is screaming in agony from the full-body possession, but our boy just ignores it, ordering his own puppets to attack their new meat shield. He even forces the boss to eat its own kind, mocking its complete lack of intelligence, which is when Waji the frog leaps into action, winding up a powerful tongue lashing, but the attack barely even tickles the giant fish lizard, proving totally ineffective. So his bee puppet takes over, conjuring a tiny little fire spell right above the boss, which is apparently all it takes to make the entire thing explode in a glorious fireball. This mudskipper boss unleashes some advanced swamp flow art, proving it's not just another dumb fish, and our boy is completely stunned, realizing this thing is packing some serious intermediate level magic. He decides to sacrifice Crabsuke as a meat shield, ordering it to charge in for a desperate trade, but his puppet suddenly cuts the connection, completely ignoring the command to go be a living shield because its AI decided the optimal action was to keep eating whatever it was munching on. That's when our boy realizes his crab was on the verge of evolving, which is a way better plan. And right on cue, Crabsuke starts glowing, leveling up right in the middle of the battlefield, transforming into a massive golden swamp crab king that looks like a proper boss monster now. His system confirms it's a boss-level scavenger with an iron-hard shell and crushing pincers, so he immediately jumps into his new ride, taunting the fish about their sudden power difference. This mudskipper boss stares down the massive golden crab, completely unimpressed by its flashy evolution, so our boy, piloting his new puppet, tells the fish to get ready for a beatdown, and Crabsuke charges forward like a freight train, ready to crush the competition under its new shell, which is more than enough to make the fish boss absolutely panic at the incoming golden blur, but its desperate fin boomerang attack just shatters on impact, doing absolutely zero damage. This boss is somehow insta-killed anyway, leaving our boy totally confused by the anticlimactic victory, until the system explains his puppet's shell was still soft from molting, making it both weak and delicious. This impromptu cooking lesson suggests coating the freshly dead puppet in some magic potato starch, then deep frying the entire thing in hot oil for 3 minutes for that perfect golden crisp. And just like that, his former tank is now a 5-star meal, because you never waste a good evolution. Our boy is still griping about his system's terrible cooking advice when some weird ring-shaped blur suddenly zips right past him, revealing a bizarre lizard frog thing that looks just as surprised to be there, and it immediately starts getting itself hyped up for a fight, stretching its own skin like it's putting on some kind of battle armor, and even gives itself a few pats, as if that's going to help at all, before striking a pose and letting out a surprisingly confident battle cry. Our boy is just insulted that this little creature is actually trying to provoke him, so he uses his search skill, guessing it must be worth a ton of EXP, and his tendrils immediately start slithering towards the oblivious lizard thing. Our boy immediately attacks with Gon's hammer, ready to flatten this weird little lizard thing, and the creature just lets out a panicked squeal as the weapon comes crashing down on it, but the attack just bounces right off, its weirdly flexible skin absorbing the entire blow. Turns out its slippery skin skill gives it a massive damage reduction, making his trap totally useless, so he just decides to grind the little guy into paste, confident it's only a matter of time. This lizard frog, however, seems to have a completely different plan in mind, because it suddenly unleashes some kind of swamp flow art, manipulating the entire mudflat around them, and the ground starts churning violently, snapping all of his carefully laid tendrils in half. That move completely shatters his formation, leaving our boy totally stunned by the counterplay, right as the little creature forms a massive mud spike ready to impale him with his own turf. That mud spike erupts with explosive force, completely shattering his whole battle plan, and the little lizard thing just gloats, clearly enjoying its home field advantage a little too much. His bee puppet is forced to weave through the deadly spikes just to stay in one piece, while Waji's tongue lashing gets completely shut down by the churning mud trap below. This ground itself is turning on him, swallowing his puppets whole before they can even react, and he finally gets that this isn't some dumb mob, but a sentient monster using actual tactics. This little lizard just stares him down, preparing to press its massive advantage, winding up its body like a for looks like a seriously painful finishing move, launching itself as a high-speed fin boomerang aimed right at our boy's main body. Right then, Shoutun the pufferfish inflates, turning into a spiky meat shield to intercept the blow. Shoutun the pufferfish heroically dives in, taking the full force of that spinning lizard frog's attack, and its durability plummets as the little guy gets absolutely shredded by the impact, until the system confirms the puppet is destroyed, having done its job perfectly. Because our boy's main body easily snags the now slowed lizard right out of the air, thanking his disposable minion for the perfect setup to grab the slippery opponent, and without wasting a second, he activates his dissolution skill to turn the little fighter into lunch, leaving the poor lizard thing to let out a final panic scream as it melts away, which nets him a nice chunk of EXP for finally taking down the surprisingly tough monster. And after the meal, he's left staring at the muddy remains of his opponent, looking a little confused, before he starts patting the ground, which somehow sparkles with a weird magical energy. He's suddenly confronted by the ghost of the lizard he just ate, which is a new one, and the little spirit lets out a final, agonizing scream, clearly not ready to pass on, until its rage becomes so intense that it starts screaming death threats right back at him. Our boy is baffled it can talk, but the system explains extreme emotion can trigger intellectual evolution. This newly sentient ghost immediately unleashes another round of its swamp flow art from beyond the grave, but he just scoffs, grabbing his hammer and bragging that this move has killed way tougher opponents. He easily dodges the mud spikes while winding up for a massive, hammer-throwing attack, unleashing his plasmatic cannon to finally put this annoying spirit to rest for good. This little lizard ghost just claps its hands together, preparing a surprisingly complex counterspell and summons a massive wall of mud that erupts from the ground to block his attack. Hammer slams right into the mud wall, getting completely swallowed by the ghost's surprisingly solid defense, and the weapon gets totally stuck, leaving the ghost in complete control of the battlefield, who looks way too smug about stopping his ultimate attack dead in its tracks. Our boy realizes his hammer is about to get permanently confiscated by the sentient mud, but right then, his system chimes in with a new martial arts talent for creating custom moves on the fly. He's completely baffled by the idea of creating a new skill out of thin air, so he just decides to wing it, unleashing whatever the system just cooked up for him. This manifests as a new water hammer attack, liquefying his body into a high-pressure projectile, which blasts right through the mud wall and impales the ghost with pinpoint accuracy, leaving the little spirit completely stunned, not expecting a counterattack from a trapped opponent. His new water hammer attack blasts right through the mud wall, finally putting an end to the ghost's tantrum, and with its last defense shattered, the little lizard spirit finally dissolves into nothingness for good. Meanwhile, we cut to the capital city, the ridiculously golden headquarters of the Holy See, where a council of robed individuals is holding a very serious meeting inside a massive hall. A man introduced as Pope Vicross confirms that Merlin's life force has been snuffed out for 3 days straight, adding that Gon's magic has also vanished, declaring the 2-year-long threat officially neutralized. One of his knights, Far, offers to just nuke the entire swamp to be safe, but the Pope shuts him down, because their top priority is replacing Merlin to keep their grand ascension plan right on schedule. And right on cue, the Pope announces that the perfect candidate has just walked through the door, as a young woman with long brown hair arrives to greet the council, ready for her big job interview. One of the holy knights, Deer, immediately sizes up the new girl as a suitable replacement for Merlin. But this candidate, Louisa, is currently having a complete breakdown, begging the Pope to save her master, and it turns out she's an S-rank adventurer who's convinced her entire guild is doomed without him. Another knight, Vane, immediately tries to poach her, offering a spot in his guild for A ranks and up, but she turns him down flat, instead begging the Pope to save Merlin, even if it costs her everything. This Pope finds her loyalty touching, asking if she's really prepared to sacrifice herself for the cause. And with a bit of hesitation, she confirms that she absolutely is, no matter the cost. That's when he drops the bomb that Merlin's soul is completely gone, so her little offer is useless, then tells her to stop crying and just accept her sudden promotion to one of the 7 holy knights. Louisa, however, is still a sobbing mess, completely overwhelmed by her grief and new job title. Louisa tries to pull herself together, vowing to honor her master's will and lead his guild now. But a flashback reveals the real story, as her master's tracking magic urgently summons her to his room, where she finds his body looking like a shriveled husk, completely drained of all its life force. This old mage is still alive, his eyes wide with pure, unadulterated terror from his final moments, and his body starts convulsing on the floor, a pretty undignified end for a legendary sorcerer. Turns out he had a backup plan, begging her to touch him so his soul can possess her body. But Louisa is way ahead of him, revealing she already read his secret black magic book. Merlin completely loses it, screaming at her for daring to disobey his final, very selfish order. And when he resorts to pathetic begging, she just calmly says she'll help him right now, before pulling out that same forbidden book, ready for a very different kind of magical intervention. Turns out her help was a very hands-on ritual to absorb all of her master's power, and Louisa gleefully explains she'll release him from life to take everything he owns, which is just so thoughtful. Meanwhile, back in the swamp, the lizard thing our boy just flattened is lying there completely motionless, until its eyes snap wide open, revealing it was just playing dead the entire time. This creature suddenly springs back to life and immediately starts booking it out of there, leaving our boy completely baffled that it survived and is now trying to make a run for it. He orders Waji to give chase, since no EXP notification means the target is still very much alive, and his frog puppet whips out its tongue, trying to snag the surprisingly speedy escape artist. But the lizard thing just plows through the mud like a high-speed drill, kicking up dirt everywhere, and it's actually getting away, leaving our boy panicking as his hard-earned meal makes a clean escape. He tells Waji to cut the lizard off since a straight-up race across the mud is a guaranteed loss. But the little escape artist immediately dives into the dense mangrove roots, disappearing from sight. Waji is left looking completely useless, having lost its target in the tangled mess of roots, and it turns out the little monster just climbed a tree to look down on them, practically laughing. It then scampers up the trunk, vanishing into the canopy before his puppets can even react. So our boy decides a rematch is too risky, since his new hammer move has a wind-up and the lizard is too smart. But the lizard thing pops back out, taunting him for hiding like a coward from the leader, and then unleashes its swamp flow art again, sending out a massive pulse across the entire area. Our boy realizes this isn't an attack, but some kind of magical sonar to ping his exact location, and the little monster immediately finds him, screaming for all the world to hear where he's hiding. With his location blown, Waji the frog is completely stuck in the mud and starting to freak out, so it desperately shoots its tongue out, trying to find some kind of anchor to pull itself free. And right on cue, his bee puppet swoops in for a heroic rescue, grabbing the tongue midair, using a levitation spell to start yanking the poor frog right out of the muck. This little guy goes flying through the air, finally freed from the lizard's surprisingly effective mud trap, and our boy decides his parasitic control mode is the only way to coordinate a proper escape. Waji lands back on solid ground, but the lizard thing is still a massive threat down below. So our boy's main body prepares for a tactical retreat since a direct fight is off the table, and his bee puppet immediately grabs him, taking to the sky at top speed for a quick getaway. But the lizard thing watches from below, vowing that it won't let its hard-earned meal just fly away. That little lizard thing just channels its swamp flow art, preparing to unleash another massive attack, sending a tidal wave of mud spikes erupting towards the sky, aiming to skewer them mid-flight. Our boy is absolutely done with this thing, deciding it's time to stop running and start shooting, so he unleashes a cytoplasmic machine gun, firing a volley of his own body parts as projectiles, which the lizard just casually watches, completely unimpressed by the incoming swarm of goo bullets. Then it uses its mud control to catch every single shot and fling them right back at him, turning his own attack into a deadly barrage of rock-coated shrapnel aimed at his bee puppet, which gets absolutely blasted, taking a huge chunk of damage from the reflected assault. But even with a hole in its side, the bee puppet winds up for one last desperate counter move, firing its stinger like a high-speed missile in a final, all-or-nothing shot. Our boy screams for his bee puppet as it carries him away on a one-way trip, and the little guy gives a final thumbs up, totally cool with sacrificing itself for the mission. Down below, the lizard thing just watches the stinger rocket towards it, completely unfazed, which makes our boy weirdly sentimental, realizing he's grown attached to his disposable meat shields. Now just a blob of goo falling from the sky, he desperately scans for a safe place to land, spotting a patch of dry, cracked earth that looks way safer than the cursed mud flats, so he makes a beeline for the new terrain, ready to finally catch a break for once. He lands with a relieved splat, thinking he's finally out of the woods for good, but the ground itself immediately attacks, as sharp roots start draining his health instantly, and a whip-like vine snaps out of a bush, revealing he's just landed in another ambush. Our boy lands in what he thinks is a safe zone, only to find his health instantly draining away, and the system explains he's on a salt flat that's literally sucking all the moisture out of him. Realizing he's stuck in a giant dehydration trap, he starts panicking about how to possibly escape, but the safe, muddy ground is way too far to jump to, leaving him completely stranded. Just when things couldn't get any worse, he senses his stalker has found him yet again, and he starts complaining that this lizard thing is ridiculously persistent, even breaking the fourth wall about the chase. Turns out the lizard is furious he messed with its hair, vowing to hunt him down no matter what, so the little monster squats down, getting ready to unleash some kind of weird power-up move, which involves a bizarre high-speed ritual dance that looks absolutely ridiculous but probably isn't, before it lets out a final battle cry and launches something right at him, catching our boy off guard. That lizard thing whips its own tail right at him, which is a weirdly generous move for a mortal enemy, because our boy just starts absorbing it, gaining a massive HP boost while the salt flat drains him. His system warns that the honey he just absorbed is running out, so he'd better move fast. But the lizard is too busy gloating, completely oblivious that it just threw him a health potion. With the next safe spot way too far, our boy is still stuck in this deadly dehydration trap, so he desperately starts chucking random junk from his inventory, looking for literally anything to help, and out pops a random piece of Gon's old armor, which gives him a brilliant last-second idea. This lizard thing just stares, completely baffled by the sudden appearance of a metal boot, as our boy's main body starts pouring itself right into the greave like a liquid sock, turning the armor into a pair of makeshift boots that perfectly negate the salt flat's damage. With his new armor boots on, he takes his first shaky step across the deadly salt flat, and immediately starts complaining about how clumsy his new ride is while trying not to fall over. He struggles to keep his balance, basically learning how to walk all over again in this clunky setup, but after a few more awkward steps, he finally starts to get the hang of his new legs. He stands tall, feeling pretty good about his brilliant last-second escape plan, realizing piloting the armor is just like walking on stilts, which is apparently a thing he knows how to do. Now that he's mobile again, he gives the lizard a smug wave goodbye before making his grand exit, but the little monster is not letting him go, powering up its swamp flow art for one last shot. Its magic fizzles out completely on the dry ground, leaving a few pathetic cracks in the dirt, and our boy just laughs, mocking the lizard since its signature mud magic is totally useless out here. That lizard thing is left screaming empty threats, completely powerless on the dry ground, while our boy just clomps away in his new armor boots, not even bothering to look back. As he wanders through the desolate landscape, he suddenly spots a strange glow on the horizon, and his curiosity gets the better of him, so he starts heading toward the mysterious light, which gets brighter as he approaches, revealing some kind of ancient magical structure. Turns out it's a full-blown teleportation gate, a potential ticket out of this whole swamp, but he immediately realizes there's a massive, super concentrated salt lake blocking his path, knowing full well that falling in would mean getting instantly dehydrated into nothingness. Deciding he's not nearly strong enough to risk a trip to the human world, he wisely turns back, instead taking a moment to build a tiny, heartfelt graveyard for all his fallen puppet comrades. After that whole mess, he takes a quick look at his stats, confirming he's still level 51, but he's absolutely furious that one little lizard managed to wipe out his entire puppet army, so he decides to just lay low and grind safely, since the local monsters are only getting stronger. As if on cue, a massive thunderstorm rolls, setting the perfect gloomy mood for his tactical retreat, and he finds a cozy little hideout, casually noting that he forgot to close the door before it rained. So he stretches out a tendril to seal up the entrance and get a little privacy for once, only to immediately recoil in absolute terror at what's waiting for him right outside. Turns out his little lizard stalker tracked him down through the storm, and it looks absolutely livid, lunging forward with terrifying speed while literally crying tears of pure, unadulterated rage, leaving our boy completely frozen as his worst nightmare comes crashing right into his safe house. That lizard thing slams right into his hideout, a blur of pure, unadulterated rage, and our boy is so traumatized he's literally begging it to stay away from him when he looks up to see even more glowing monsters descending from above, only to wake up in a cold sweat, realizing that whole chase sequence was just a nightmare. After that little mental breakdown, he wakes up to a brand new, much sunnier day, and immediately puts his newly spawned slime minions to work, ordering them to go find food, sending his little goon squad out into the forest to start the daily grind for him. With his crew handling the grunt work, he sets a new goal to hit level 60 for his next evolution. But one of his minions gets instantly snatched up by a long, sticky tongue out of nowhere, which belongs to some giant blue lizard thing that's already slurping down his poor underling. Our boy scoffs, wondering if this new lizard really understands who the actual predator is around here, and he immediately hits its tongue with dissolution since it's still attached to his poor minion. This lizard thing recoils in agony, its tongue literally melting away from the corrosive touch, so in a panic it tries to escape by using camouflage to blend right into a nearby tree. But our boy just mocks its little disappearing act, using his search skill to scan the entire area, and his grid immediately pings the lizard's exact location as a tendril snakes out to make contact, which finds its target perfectly, leaving the poor creature frozen in absolute terror as it's caught. Just like that, he's got a brand new swamp lizard puppet for his ever-growing zombie collection. Meanwhile, his minions have brought back an absolute mountain of food, earning some rare praise for once, which makes him realize just dissolving mobs is inefficient, so it's time to develop better skills. His system dangles a new cooking skill in front of him, promising way better EXP from gourmet meals, so with a fresh pile of monster parts, he immediately asks the system for some top-tier recipes, which pulls up a menu of delicious-looking grilled platters and soups that all need one crucial ingredient: fire. He immediately complains about the fire requirement, asking for something he can make with his bare blobs, and after a quick search, the system actually finds a recipe that fits his very limited skill set, which turns out to be a plain salad, a groundbreaking dish made by just washing stuff and tossing it together. Our boy is absolutely furious, screaming about how a pathetic salad is completely useless for his grand leveling plans. He then remembers his bee puppet could make fire, right before recalling he ate the entire local population, but just as he's about to give up on a hot meal, a brilliant idea suddenly hits him, because he remembers another local monster that's basically a walking, talking ball of pure fire. He immediately tracks down a local fire squirrel, which is exactly as advertised and just trying to eat a nut, so naturally, he brings Gon's hammer crashing down on it without a second of hesitation, knocking the poor thing out cold while noting its fire is way stronger than his old bee puppets. Just like that, he's got a brand new fire squirrel puppet with a very handy self-destruct feature, and he immediately puts his new minion to work, ordering it to heat up a rock for his grill. This little zombie squirrel powers up a fireball, looking way more intense than you'd ever expect, only to just breathe some fire on the stone, turning it into a perfectly functional stovetop for him. With his grill ready, our boy transforms into Chef Slime, complete with a bandana and a giant fork. Then he activates his cooking skill, tossing a whole pile of monster parts onto his new hot plate. And after a 2-hour-long culinary session, the real feast is finally about to begin. He puts the final touches on his masterpiece, seasoning the monster parts with salt from the flats, and the whole meal starts glowing with an almost holy light, because of course it does. Our boy looks on with pride, having successfully cooked his first ever gourmet monster medley, which includes a whole frog, some kind of mushroom soup, and a side of crispy-looking grubs. Without a second of hesitation, he dives in to devour the entire spread in one massive gulp, using dissolution to instantly absorb the food and rack up a ridiculous amount of EXP. This culinary experience gives him a full-blown epiphany about cooking, right before he levels up to 52, confirming this method is way more efficient than just eating mobs raw, a true game-changer for his grind. 2 weeks later, he's completely taken over the entire region, turning the swamp into his personal territory, and thanks to his new Dominion skill, he's already hit level 54 with maxed out abilities. His new frog puppet, Waji 3.0, is happily hopping through its designated patrol route, all thanks to his brilliant new slime signal relay system for extended puppet control, which creates a massive network across his territory, giving him instant command over his entire army. That brilliant plan lasts all of 5 seconds before his frog puppet gets absolutely shredded by a mysterious blur, leaving our boy completely stunned at that his brand new minion was just instantly one-shotted. He immediately shifts his consciousness to a bird puppet to get a look at the culprit, spotting a massive, violent marsh ox that his system flags as extremely dangerous and magic immune. This slime relay he was just using starts trembling as the monster gets dangerously close, so he quickly yanks his consciousness back to his main body, realizing the immediate threat right as the armored beast charges, confirming this is a high-level monster he's not ready for. Our boy talks a big game, threatening the ox with a cytoplasmic cannon for trespassing on his turf, but the beast just hits him with a death pressure stare down, a pure mental intimidation move, and his system confirms the attack can literally kill you if the level gap is wide enough, which is exactly what happens, as his poor little slime relay gets instantly deleted by its glare. With his clone dead, the ox just turns to leave, clearly not considering him a threat anymore, so our boy fires off his cannon anyway, sending a volley of slime bullets after the retreating beast, which makes the ox stop dead in its tracks, probably more annoyed than anything else. It just watches the attack rain down, completely unfazed by the incoming slime storm, so he tries to pin it down with his search skill, spreading tendrils all over the ground. But the monster just casually steps on them, snapping his network without even noticing. He figures the ox is all brawn and no brain, planning to just wear it down with some clever hit-and-run tactics, so he swings Gon's hammer with everything he's got, aiming to chip away at the beast's armored hide. But the attack just bounces right off, doing absolutely nothing to the walking, magic immune tank. Our boy is completely stunned, realizing this thing's defense is on a whole other level, and the ox just hits him with that death pressure stare again, locking on for the kill, which instantly deletes his poor clone for the second time, proving his brilliant plan was a total bust. Just as the beast turns to leave, our boy's main body hurls the hammer through the air for one last shot, so the ox counters by slamming its head into the ground, unleashing a devastating skull blast, sending a massive shockwave erupting from the earth that shatters everything in its path, and his hammer gets swatted out of the sky like a fly, completely neutralizing the final attack. Hiding in the bushes, our boy spots the ox's one glaring, undefended weak point, so he fires a golden tendril with pinpoint accuracy right at the beast's unguarded rear, which makes direct contact with its exhaust port, a truly dishonorable but effective strategy. His tendril then expands like a golden flower, completely plugging up the exit for good, and our boy just holds on, commenting on how ridiculously tight the seal is on his new cork. He even justifies this dirty tactic, remembering that attacking from behind is nature's most effective kill method. This ox starts thrashing around in pure agony, completely unable to dislodge the invasive slime plug, so our boy just travels up the tendril, taking a disgusting shortcut right into the beast's innards, arriving in its stomach, which is surprisingly clean, all things considered. With its main exit blocked, the ox just unleashes a volcanic torrent of digestive juices from its mouth instead. While the ox is busy puking its guts out, his hammer is still doing absolutely nothing to its armor, and the poor beast continues to thrash around, completely helpless against the world's most disgusting internal assault, letting out a final blood-soaked roar, clearly not enjoying the whole exploding from the inside experience. That's our boy's cue to climb right out of the beast's mouth, ready for the next phase of his plan, and he immediately activates his search skill, spreading tendrils through the monster's insides to find a weak spot, which gives him a full body scan of the ox's vital organs, mapping out its entire anatomy, until he locks onto the one thing that'll end this fight for good, its massive, unprotected heart. He reforms his body around Gon's hammer, aiming for a point-blank shot from within the beast's itself, unleashing his plasmatic cannon for a truly gruesome but undeniably effective internal execution, and the massive ox finally collapses, its eyes rolling back as the internal demolition job pays off. With the ox finally down, the system confirms he just scored a massive EXP jackpot for punching way above his weight class, and his slime network reveals the beast actually came from a totally unexplored region, which is a big red flag. He realizes its broken horns mean something even nastier is out there, making him wonder what's supercharging this whole swamp, but he tables that existential dread for later, getting to work dissolving the ox's ridiculously tough hide from the inside. This whole process nets him some top-tier steak and high-grade armor plates, a pretty sweet haul for his troubles, and he figures if just dissolving it was this good, cooking the meat is going to be a whole new level of power grinding. After finishing the meal, he gives a polite little thank you to the now skeletal remains of his opponent, right as the skull starts cracking apart, unleashing a blindingly bright magical energy from within, which erupts into a massive pillar of light, shooting straight up into the sky like some kind of beacon, and that beam opens a swirling portal, revealing the silhouettes of several people just waiting on the other side. A group of B-rank adventurers steps through the portal, excited that the swamp is finally open for missions again, while some mages show off their guild's exclusive flying magic, much to the envy of everyone else, and the whole expedition force gathers on the shore of that same deadly salt lake our boy just escaped, which one of them, Lena, points out will instantly dehydrate anyone who's dumb enough to fall in. Her leader isn't worried though, revealing he invited a special guest to help them cross safely, who turns out to be a tiny but confident-looking mage named Xiao Shi, a new recruit to their guild. Without wasting a second, she unleashes a massive flash freeze spell right at the water's edge, creating a huge, solid ice bridge that stretches all the way across the deadly lake, and the rest of the adventurers immediately start marching across the newly formed path, thanking her for the assist so they can go collect life energy and claim their bounty. This adventurers watch another team run off, with their leader smugly calling them rookies who'll die out here. But as two of them sprint across the ice bridge, something massive starts breaking through from below, and a giant swamp serpent erupts from the water, completely shattering their path and sending everyone flying. This whole party is left absolutely stunned by the sudden, extremely violent ambush, while their leader notes the overflowing magic, realizing this thing just evolved into a three-headed monster. This newly formed Hydra rises from the depths, and the red-haired guy rallies his team for a boss fight, while our boy is just chilling by a campfire, roasting some regular snakes for a nice stat-boosting meal. He's also complaining about how hot the fire is, literally taking damage just to cook his dinner, which makes him think about the ox armor he needs to assemble for some real defense against high-level threats. Because he knows his dishonorable butt-plug tactic isn't a reliable strategy for every single fight. His system warns him that crafting will leave his main body completely defenseless out in the open. But he's not worried since his puppet network is on high alert, so he dives into his personal crafting space. He then enters his personal pocket dimension, a golden workshop perfect for some serious crafting, and it turns out Gon's forging skill combined with his own powers means he can craft without any tools. So he pulls out his materials, Gon's busted armor and the super tough plates from that ox monster, slotting the old armor in as the main component and adding the ox plate as a reinforcement material. This system gives him one last warning, though. If this fails, all the materials are gone for good, but he figures the armor's durability is already zero, so there's literally nothing to lose by trying. With a confident slap of his tendril, he hits the forge button to kick things off, and the two materials start glowing as the system begins the high-stakes combination process. These two materials fuse together in a brilliant flash of light inside his workshop, and the system confirms the high-stakes crafting gamble was a massive success, which makes our boy snap right back to reality as his creation takes form, with a fully armored hand rising from the slime puddle on the ground, followed by the rest of the body, now clad in some seriously impressive new gear. Turns out he forged resistance armor, a set that absorbs physical hits and nerfs magic, giving him a brand new, incredibly intimidating full-body mech suit to pilot. So he immediately activates his Dominion skill, ready to take his new toy for a spin, and his main slime body starts pouring itself right towards the empty armor, filling it up from the inside to finally gain some real, tangible power. His main body floods into the armor, using his Dominion skill to become a one-slime mech pilot, and it turns out he's using a whole slime squad, with 4 clones piloting the limbs like a Gundam. He stands tall in his brand new suit, looking way more intimidating than a simple puddle of goo, though he does notice the armor is a bit smaller than the original, a slight downgrade in height. But who cares about size when you've got 5 brains working together for perfect coordination, right? He immediately tests out a cytoplasmic fist, launching his gauntlet like a high-speed rocket punch, which slams into a nearby tree, leaving a perfectly cartoonish imprint of his knuckles. Our boy is seriously impressed with the power and accuracy of his new long-range attack, so he retracts the fist, which zips right back to reattach to his arm seamlessly, and just as he's celebrating his awesome new gear, the entire arm just falls right off. Our boy realizes his 5-brain committee is having a hard time agreeing on how to pilot the armor, and it turns out the suit takes up 5 of his 7 consciousness slots, leaving only 2 for puppets. He decides it's time to run some serious field tests to find the most effective combat combinations. So without wasting a single second, he dives right into his grand training montage, spreading his slime network across the ground to practice coordinating with his remaining puppets, though he can't help but notice how pathetic his little minions look next to his new mech suit. Meanwhile, that adventure party is finishing off the giant 3-headed swamp serpent in a brutal fight, and while one of them thinks it's over, her red-haired partner insists on a final confirming blow, which turns out to be a good call, as the monster's head suddenly starts twitching on the ground. But their A-rank backup, Baxi, steps in to confirm the beast is completely and totally dead. Just as everyone thinks he's been dissolved, Baxi's arm starts regenerating from the serpent's bite, and in a matter of seconds, it's completely back to normal, much to his team's surprise. This red-haired leader is stunned, asking if Baxi really survived getting swallowed whole by the monster, which earns him a brutal lecture about how his reckless command almost got the entire party wiped out. This kid immediately apologizes, completely humbled by the veteran's well-deserved dressing down, so Baxi tosses him a few potions, telling the group to patch themselves up after that mess. He then gives them some life-saving advice. Run from high-level monsters, don't try to be a hero. His teammates realize this scary A-ranker is actually looking out for them, despite his harsh attitude, and with her magic restored, little Xiaoxi unleashes another flash freeze to continue their path, while Baxi complains about being sent on such a simple babysitting mission in the first place. Meanwhile, Boxy whips out a holy cross, revealing he's not just here for babysitting duty. A massive magic circle appears around the dead serpent, preparing for some kind of dark ritual, and its body dissolves into a pillar of pure red energy, completing whatever shady spell he's casting. He scoffs that they could have just used the fated material directly, hinting at a much darker plan. Back with our boy, his new armor clones are practicing some very questionable synchronized martial arts poses. One of them picks up Gon's hammer, and the system confirms its martial talent is adapting, which it immediately uses to pulverize a massive boulder with a single, effortless swing, leaving our boy stunned that a casual attack now has the force of his full-power cannon. Now he's got a choice: explore the swamp or risk the portal to stop the Pope's world-ending plan. So deciding he can't just sit back, he starts moving out, ready to take on the world. Our boy's little shoulder slime immediately senses intruders, wondering who's dumb enough to trespass on his turf. Turns out it's that same adventurer party, with the leader complaining their guide is getting them lost. And she points out all the weird yellow goo, correctly guessing the local ecosystem has changed a bit. Naturally, the red-haired leader complains about his new boots right before stepping directly into a slime trap. That immediately triggers the ambush, as giant swamp leeches erupt from the ground to say hello. But the party's rogue just slices them all to bits, looking completely disgusted by the whole experience. Their celebration is cut short when massive blade-legged centipedes crawl out of the woodwork, and one of the other adventurers gets jumped by a swarm of much smaller, flesh-eating beetles, which immediately dig into his skin, latching on like a bunch of angry, oversized ticks, and in seconds, the poor guy is completely devoured, exploding into a bloody mess right before his friend's eyes. This party is immediately swarmed by armored centipedes, and the rogue starts freaking out as they crawl all over her, because her dagger does absolutely nothing to its tough shell, leaving her screaming for someone to get it off. While she's having a meltdown, the red-haired leader calmly tells her to chill before drawing his sword, channeling some serious magic into his blade for a fiery magic sword art to handle the bug problem. This kid unleashes a massive holy fire attack, engulfing the entire area in a purifying inferno, and the flames instantly incinerate the entire centipede swarm, turning them into crispy critters in a flash. His attack leaves a massive scorched crater, but somehow created perfect safety zones for his teammates, which our boy's clone watches from a distance, realizing they must have come through that portal he saw earlier. Unfortunately for him, the holy fire is also burning up his slime network, setting his precious tendrils ablaze, while the red-haired leader's sword starts glowing, absorbing the souls of everything he just killed. This red-haired leader gives his team a big, dramatic speech about how serious their mission is, lecturing them that this isn't some game, and that one mistake out here will get them killed. He scoffs that these low-level mobs are worthless, right before one of our boy's frog puppets appears, and immediately slaps him right across the face with an empowered tongue for his troubles. This little frog puppet lands and strikes a pose, clearly very proud of its handiwork, which sends the leader into a rage, screaming that he's going to murder the little thing, so he charges in with a fiery fire slash, completely forgetting his own lecture about staying calm. Our boy decides to test their strength with his puppets, as one frog gets caught in the blast, but another one just winds up a tong fist, punching the guy square in the jaw again. Now the kid is absolutely furious, his face bruised and his eyes glowing with pure, unadulterated rage. His teammate screams at him to stop being an idiot, but that ship has clearly sailed, and while the rest of the party questions their life choices, our boy's puppets get into position. From up above, his giant spider puppet prepares to welcome them to the neighborhood, firing a massive web bomb right into the middle of their formation, which explodes on impact, splattering a ridiculously sticky substance all over the place. One of the adventurers gets completely glued to the ground, screaming that he can't move, so the little mage identifies the attack and prepares to freeze them free with her ice magic, but a long, slimy tongue suddenly lashes out and wraps right around her staff, yanking the weapon clean out of her hands before she can even cast the spell. Turns out our boy's lizard puppet was waiting in the trees, ready to disarm their only caster. With their caster neutralized, the little mage is completely stuck in the spider's sticky trap, which sends the red-haired leader into a blind rage, screaming for the frog puppet's head. But before he can connect, Gon's hammer comes flying out of the trees to intercept his charge, and he barely manages to parry the surprise attack, getting knocked back by the sheer force. This hammer then flies back and lands perfectly in one of our boys' slime relays on the ground, which immediately starts absorbing the weapon, preparing to show them what it can really do. This adventurers are stunned, realizing this yellow goo is a monster that actually knows how to use weapons. While the slime blob writhes ominously, the leader finally realizes the real threat he's facing, ordering his team to enchant their weapons right as our boy makes his grand entrance from above, landing with a ground-shattering impact in his new armor, ready to welcome them to his swamp personally. This red-haired leader warns his team the slime absorbs magic, so they'll have to use physical attacks, while his teammate points out the entire slime network on the ground is getting seriously agitated, and as the leader boasts about having more holy fire, the goo starts surging towards them menacingly. But our boy just roars at his own slime network to back the hell off, which it actually does, pulling back to create a perfect safe zone around the adventurers. This party is completely stunned that the monster horde just obeyed some random knight. teammate. So he tries opening a dialogue, asking if they can understand him, leaving them totally baffled. His little shoulder slime is having a full-blown epiphany, realizing he can actually communicate with them. And it turns out Gon's knowledge encyclopedia skill came with a universal language pack for this world. So by just reshaping his body to mimic vocal cords, he can finally talk like a normal person. He's even got a full-on soundboard for his new voice, complete with pitch and tone sliders, letting him mimic anything from a cute girl to a tough guy just by reshaping his slime. This party's rogue immediately gets suspicious, demanding to know his guild since they were the first ones in, so our boy just wings it, claiming he's from the 100 Forms Guild on a secret cleanup mission. That turns out to be the worst possible answer, as she calls him a heretic and lunges in for the kill, unleashing a swift kill technique that's supposed to be an instant execution. But his slime body just contorts inside the armor, effortlessly dodging every single one of her slashes, and he casually catches her final blade, telling her that's quite enough of that. She's completely stunned, realizing his movements are impossibly flexible for someone in full plate mail. Then the red-haired leader starts screaming about him making a pact with a demon, which just confuses our boy. Our boy calls out their stunning lack of gratitude, tanking a hit while asking why they're attacking him, which leaves the leader completely stunned that his master-crafted sword was just casually blocked. So our hero sends the kid flying with a single punch, not even breaking a sweat, and immediately starts charging up a plasmatic cannon to really finish the conversation. But the party's rogue jumps in from behind, unleashing a shadow kill right at his neck. She screams that he's dead for daring to hurt her teammate, going for the final blow, while the red-haired leader desperately tries to tell her to stop, wanting to take him alive, insisting they need him for information on the other heretics, but it's way too late for that, because she accidentally killed him, claiming she just got too angry seeing her leader get hurt. That excuse leaves the kid completely flustered, wondering when she started caring so much about him. This rogue sits on our boy's helmet, completely flustered while denying she was worried about her leader, and the red-haired kid takes this as the perfect time to pour his heart out, convinced she still loves him. She explains her master told her to abandon all emotion to be a great assassin, the usual tragic backstory, so he asks her to run away with him after a few more missions, and she's immediately on board. This whole romantic confession happens while she's literally holding our boy's slime clone hostage, who's just listening in, but their touching moment is cut short when his main body's gauntlet clenches right in her face and sends her flying with a single armor-clad punch for all her trouble. She's completely baffled that he's still alive after her fatal headshot, a classic rookie mistake. So our boy decides if talking is off the table, he'll just have to restrain them instead. Her leader rushes to her side, and they both conclude he must have some kind of demon power. Our boy tries to explain they've all been duped by the church, flexing that he can handle them easily, but the red-haired leader calls it all lies, powering up his sword to personally wipe him off the map. He channels some holy fire, screaming about purging all evil with his ridiculously righteous blade, while our hero just cracks his knuckles inside the armor, completely unimpressed by the light show. He sighs that they're forcing his hand, right as his system activates his martial talent for a beatdown. Meanwhile, in another part of the swamp, some other poor monsters are getting zapped into oblivion, where a whole new party of adventurers is using a soul collection spell to harvest the dead. Their leader, Feifei, isn't surprised by a huge power spike, saying the boss is finally showing up, and at that exact moment, the ground in front of them erupts in a massive explosion of mud, as a giant furious-looking frog monster bursts out, ready to welcome them to its territory. A C-rank adventurer named Njita steps up, confidently preparing to cast some wind magic, and she unleashes a gathering spell that whips up a massive vortex around her, which does absolutely nothing as the giant frog just casually swats her out of the way. That one hit leaves her completely dazed, with a nasty-looking mark on her neck, so her leader, Feifei, screams at her to snap out of it before casting some crimson lightning, which zaps the mud all around the monster but completely misses the actual target, while another teammate summons a bunch of mud spikes, noting the frog is way too fast. But the beast just claps its hands, shattering the attack like it's absolutely nothing. So Feifei decides to stop messing around, charging up a high-level Scarlet Bolt for the kill, and the attack slams right into the frog, engulfing it in a massive blast of pure red energy. This frog monster just tanks the massive lightning bolt, looking more annoyed than actually hurt, but then it explodes into a bloody mess, and Feifei thinks the fight is finally over. She immediately starts lecturing her teammate for struggling with a single mudskipper leader, but that victory speech gets cut short when she realizes the ground beneath her is moving, because two more of those giant frog monsters erupt right from the mud, trapping her leaving her screaming in shock, realizing there wasn't just one, but a whole squad of them. Her teammate Anjita screams in horror as Feifei gets dragged right down into the mud pit, so Anjita unleashes a triple Meyer vortex, turning the entire battlefield into a swirling mud trap. For a second, the frogs seem confused, right before all three of them lock onto their new target, and she barely manages to throw up a magic shield as the entire frog squad lunges in for the kill. Anjita realizes these frogs are way too coordinated and decides it's time to bail immediately, so she pops her light sword wings to make a desperate escape, kicking up a massive vortex. But one of the giant frog monsters is already right behind her, ready for a mid-flight snack. A smaller, blood-soaked version of the monster just stares blankly, a truly terrible omen for her. And a massive tail comes crashing down, smashing her right into a pit filled with old skeletons. Meanwhile, Feifei wakes up completely disoriented, covered in mud among countless bones, and she stumbles to her feet, trying to figure out where she is in this underground graveyard, only to look up and see something that makes her blood run absolutely cold, because a giant frog is holding Anjita's unconscious body, about to feed her to its hungry kids. That's when the level 69 Mudskipper King appears, asking if she enjoyed killing his children. Feifei is completely horrified, realizing this talking frog is a super rare, intelligent monster. But the Mudskipper King just complains about being hungry, ordering his kids to go hunt for more food, and his little minions all cheer like it's a field trip, completely ready to go hunting, with one of them staring up with those big soulless eyes, looking way too eager for the job. This king then turns to Feifei, asking if she's seen a certain yellow monster around here, and when she's too terrified to answer, the beast gets impatient, looming over her menacingly, before it slams its hand down in a rage, splattering blood all over the boneyard. It then starts ranting about how a rainstorm saved it from some previous fight, still fuming, its eyes glowing with pure fury as it remembers whatever beat it down before. And that anger boils over as it powers up, its eyes flaring like two miniature suns. Meanwhile, that massive pillar of light from the ox's skull is attracting some unwanted attention, as a ridiculously buff adventurer with sunglasses senses the evolution energy and decides to investigate. He's immediately confronted by two weird bird-snake hybrids, deciding he'll just clear them out first, so he leaps into action, charging straight at the low-level mobs without a second thought, and instantly flattens the first bird with a punch right to its face, taking it out of the fight. This remaining red snake bird lunges in to take its shot while he's distracted, sinking its fangs deep into his arm for what should be a fatal bite, but the guy just stares at the wound, looking more bored than anything else, before casually ripping the snake monster clean in half with his bare hands. He then glances at his arm, calmly identifying the attack as some kind of petrification venom. This last snakebird monster unleashes a petrification breath, spitting a glowing rock right at his face, and the attack erupts in a massive fiery explosion, completely engulfing the adventurer's arm, which makes him note the local wildlife has gotten way tougher, clearly unimpressed by the power-up. His entire arm turns to stone, but he seems more annoyed than worried about the whole situation, realizing the death of a 9-headed dragon lord has supercharged every monster in the region. This remaining bird things start chirping, probably thinking they've actually won this fight for a second, so the adventurer decides to get serious, sprouting angelic wings and powering up to 50%. While our boy spots that same evolution beacon, wondering what kind of chaos is unfolding over there, he decides to just ignore it, admitting he's got some serious trauma from that part of the swamp, leaving the captured red-haired leader to scream empty threats about his guild getting revenge for this. This party's rogue is stunned, realizing his assassin moves are a perfect copy of her master's, so our boy tries again, insisting they're all just brainwashed pawns of the corrupt church. But with his cover blown, he knows his secret guild is actually public enemy number one. He could just go full villain, wiping them all out for some sweet EXP and a clean slate, or he could take the high road, trying to win them over with the power of friendship, leaving him at a classic moral crossroads: peace and love, or murder and mayhem. He decides to honor Gon's will, concluding that killing people for power is a bad look, right as a volley of arrows comes flying out of nowhere to interrupt his big moment. Our hero is forced to dodge the surprise attack, completely caught off guard by the ambush, and it turns out the rogue's party has arrived, ready to save her from this mysterious night. His little shoulder slime is absolutely horrified, realizing his puppet squad is getting wiped out, as the little mage unleashes her ice magic, flash freezing his entire ambush force, completely encasing his spider and lizard puppets in solid blocks of ice for good. With the threat gone, the red-haired leader gets a patch and himself up, and he rallies his entire backup squad, ready to take our boy down as a team, so our hero sighs that he didn't want to kill them, but they're really forcing his hand, unleashing that same death pressure skill he copied from the ox monster, which immediately terrifies the entire party, who realize they're completely and totally outmatched. He decides to go all out, testing his new power to see how he stacks up, but the red-haired kid is stunned to see his brave party is already running for the hills. This little mage asks what they're supposed to do now that their backup just ditched them, so her leader scoffs that the deserters were useless, insisting the three of them are enough. He then lays out a textbook battle plan for a fight they're about to lose spectacularly, but the rogue immediately calls him an idiot, grabbing the mage for a tactical retreat instead. This leader yells at the poor mage to keep up as they all start sprinting for their lives, and his partner gives him a look that just screams, "I told you so," clearly unimpressed. Our boy is left standing there completely baffled as the entire party just bolts into the woods, and his shoulder slime realizes if they escape, his secret identity is totally blown for good. He decides to give chase, figuring they can still have a nice friendly chat about things, which sends the adventurers into a full-blown panic, realizing the monster knight is now hunting them down. That ridiculously buff adventurer blurs through the trees, closing in on the last remaining monster, and he stops to complain about how even these mid-tier freaks have gotten ridiculously strong lately. This final bird snake hybrid screeches and lunges, going for one last desperate attack, so he just casually powers up his good arm, activating a partial holy advent and at 70%, unleashing a holy hammer punch that meets the monster's charge with some serious overkill, which completely obliterates its head, leaving him holding a very messy, very dead trophy. He drops the corpse and glances over his shoulder, sensing he's not quite done cleaning up, as a giant, creepy eye opens up on his back, activating a skill simply called Stare, and its multiple pupils flare with power, scanning the entire area for any hidden threats, leaving the other bird thing absolutely paralyzed with fear, whimpering in the bushes. This last bird thing is absolutely petrified, staring down the guy whose arm it just turned to stone, but Boxy just scoffs, realizing the petrification venom is barely even a minor inconvenience for him, and with a single flex, he shatters the stone casing, boasting his body can handle it without potions. That's the cue for the last monster to book it, sprinting for its life into the woods, but Boxy's eyes flare up, questioning if it really thinks running is even an option here. One look back confirms its worst fears, as the poor thing realizes it's being hunted down, and just like that, he's on it, declaring escape is off the table while holding its mangled corpse. He then casually casts a soul collection spell, absorbing the creature's essence into a magic circle, right as the party he was babysitting runs up, calling out to him for help, and Boxy just turns to them with a deadpan look, asking why on earth they've returned.